Happy Monday, good people, to our entire NFC community. This is NFC Now, episode 13. I'm Julian Virgin. That is David O. Blas, NFC CEO, the lead promoter and the man in charge. David, what's up, man? Happy Monday.
Happy Monday to you. I am trying to share this in our group and trying to find it. It just came on. So give me 1 second to copy and paste and share it to our millions of viewers.
Indeed.
So,
Shout out to the entire NFC community for joining us on this joyous Monday afternoon, December 12th. Midway through December, I feel like a good place to start on this NFC pod is by telling everybody that we have today's show is the referee discussion. We got Clay Bennett, Nate Mann, Jimmy Neely, Jason Collins, and Jeff Kemp joining us for a really dope discussion, just like from a referee's perspective. You know, the NFC Now Fight Podcast is about giving and shining light on the NFC community, the people, the fighters responsible for making this thing happen. And I think, you know, the person locked in the cage with the fighters is also very important. So we look forward to having an interesting dialogue with our refs. What are your thoughts?
yeah, I think this was your idea. I think it was a good idea to go with the referees discussion. And I think now you've become a announcer more and more with the events. You're in the cage before anyone else is. I guess first we put the doctor in there. The doctor checks the guys out, make sure they're good to go, and then the trainers come in and you come in. So kind of you and the referee are in there for a while before the scorecard's announced. And I think you go to the referee for advice on how to call the fight, what kind of submission it was. Now that you're training jiu-jitsu, you should know pretty soon what kind of jiu-jitsu, what kind of submission it is. But I know you look to them for advice and some conversations that not many other people are privy to in there.
And I think those are like the dopest dialogues, like, you know, between the fight being over and the actual decision being read, you could say it's like maybe like a minute and a half, 2 minutes. But in that time, especially after a very chaotic fight, or if I just have a question about something that happened in maybe like the first round, I can always just go to somebody and be like, hey, like, what were you looking at? Why did you decide to stop that fight? How'd you score that? You know, if I'm talking to a judge, but just like getting into their mind, so I have a better understanding about what I'm looking at and be able to explain to everybody at the event what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, during the whole event, I usually sit next to John Merigliano. Unfortunate for him, I usually assign the seats, and I put John Merigliano next to me so I can ask him questions the whole time. And everyone knows I don't fight, I don't train jiu-jitsu, so I don't know everything that's going on in the cage. But if you ever look at John Merigliano, and he's an attorney by trade, he owns his own law firm, he's a judge at night. In Cobb County, but he keeps a note card on every single round, every single fight. I've never seen any other judge do that. He's not a referee, he's just a judge. But this way he can go back, and if anyone has any questions like the athletic commission, you know, why did you score the David Oblis versus Julian fight the way that you did? He can actually pull out in his library the note card of that fight, of that round. And it's interesting. I've never seen anyone else do that before.
I was about to say, I wonder is that like standard practice, or is that just like John's process?
I think it's just John's process. That's probably the law firm, the attorney guy, and him coming out, and I think it's just what he enjoys doing. That's how he keeps track of it. So I think it's pretty cool.
I wish more people would do that, and maybe we'll find out today, like who does it and who does and who doesn't. But yeah, I think the referees are definitely a big part of each fight. You know, even like when you watch UFC, like I know all the UFC referees. You know what I'm saying? I know who does what and how. Like, okay, this person might let it go a little longer. This person's been doing some real suspect business here recently. I don't like the way he's calling fights. And so I feel like we have that same familiar relationship with our NFC refs. So y'all are in tune for an amazing show. I definitely recommend that you go ahead and drop a comment down low. Let me know who your favorite referee is in the NFC and why. Before we get to our first guest, I want to talk to you. Did you see UFC? What was it?
Was it 282 or something like that? I don't know.
Yeah, I forgot the number. But did you see this past UFC?
I did watch it. I ordered it. I watched it. I took my sleeping pill right before the main event, so I missed the entire main event. I kind of did that on purpose. From what I read, I didn't miss too much. I was there to see Bryce Mitchell from Arkansas. I've always found him to be an extremely exciting, interesting character, and I wanted to watch Patty the Batty. I had no interest in the main event, and I hated to see what happened to Bryce Mitchell. I mean, such a nice guy, such a unique character. He really got the beat down pretty bad. And then the Patty fight obviously ended with a lot of controversy out there.
How'd you score the Patty fight?
I think I had him losing 2-1. I didn't keep the John Wrigley on a note card. That's just what I had in my head, 2-1. But I had Patty losing rounds 1 and 2. And I had probably Patty win round 3, although that could have gone either way.
I can't even say he won round 3 because he got control for damn near 4 minutes, like to the point where, Herdean, you could see Herdean like wanting to jump in and like, break them up. But I also didn't want him to break them up because Gordon was keeping him there. I think I fall like on Joe Rogan's side on like, yo, if somebody takes a position and they can't get out of the position, why are you going to harm the person for not necessarily advancing position? Maybe we could talk to our reps about that a little bit later. But
I think that is something. Let's make sure and make a mental note, and I'll put on my little note card to talk to them about how they do score a fight. Even though they're referees, they're also judges as well. And I think that goes in a lot. And I'll say there's been fighters and trainers that argue with me all the time of their fighter was robbed, this and that. And many times, I remember there's one incident at Team Octopus. One fighter trainer was arguing that he won the fight, and Nate Mann happened to be there with me. And Nate went over the rule set with him on kickboxing, on how you judge a fight in kickboxing. And the guy thought you still judge it almost like IKF kickboxing tournaments, the number of kicks, the number of this and that. And Nate explained to him, no, this is how we're told to judge kickboxing. Unfortunately, judging it the way we did, your guy lost the fight. He wasn't robbed. You just don't know how we're told to score fights.
Well, I also think, what are your thoughts about like the scoring system in general? Because I know MMA does have like a scoring system that was adopted by boxing, but like they're two completely different sports.
Yeah, I guess I'll wait to say what the referees say on exactly how they do it. And I've had Blake tell me, I think it's, and again, don't listen to me, listen to Jason and Jimmy, the other guys, but I think it's something like dominance, duration, and damage. And I forget the order those three go in. It'll be interesting talking to them, but it's almost like the duration of the fight, of the round that you're in control, the dominance you have on the other guy, and what was the other D? The damage. How much damage did you inflict? So let's talk to them. That way I don't want to mislead people, our millions of viewers. I put the fights together, but I'm not a judge. So we have millions of viewers, and I don't want to mess them up.
Patty the Batty was going around saying that, look at my face, I didn't take too much damage, but I kept seeing his head get knocked back from that left hand. And I saw it consistently for at least 2 rounds.
Yeah, fighters always say that. Look at the damage on that guy compared to me. And that's all it's used against like Nate Diaz, whose face looks like scrambled eggs after every single fight. Like you can have him play blackjack against someone that gets cut all over. So it's not really the way your face looks, because you could get the shit beat out of you in round 1, but round 2 through 5 you could win, but you're still cut up from round 1. So how your face looks, I know that's always a BS argument.
Yeah. I thought he lost the fight 2 rounds for 1 being nice. I really, you really could have scored that 3-0. And, I do think that the UFC wants to push him, and they really, the whole week it was like Patty the Batty's pay-per-view debut, and they threw him against Jared Gordon, who knows who Jared Gordon was before this week. I didn't, he's not a household name by any stretch of the imagination. And your boy really lost the fight. And then this is the thing that really got to me. This whole Patty the Batty and Ariel Helwani. I'm a big Ariel Helwani fan. I admire what he does as a journalist, and like the questions that he asks, how attentive he is, and just how much he cares about the sport. You could tell like his ego is out of it. It's just like Ariel is doing his job. But for him to come at Ariel this week, and then the first thing that comes out of his mouth as soon as Joe Rogan puts the mic in his face with something about Ariel, I just thought that was really telling. And yeah, I'm not a fan of Patty. I was actually tuned in to watch him lose. And I had to be very careful in me even saying that, because somebody like Ariel, he may have his own opinion, but he keeps his opinion out of it. Like he keeps it very factual. And so like when we talk about the fights on the NFC pod, I try to always keep it as like neutral as possible, because you don't know who I'm going to have to talk to next week and like who I want to ask for an interview from. And so I thought that whole journalist fighter back and forth that they had was very interesting to me. And I got to side with my man, Ariel. I thought he was a real stand-up dude in the whole situation.
Yeah, I unfortunately missed it. I didn't see the Ariel thing, but I love Ariel. I always thought he's been the top, the top journalist in MMA for 100 years, and he finally got his breakthrough years ago and everything like that. But yeah, I missed the whole Ariel thing.
Yeah, well, Ariel thing doesn't matter. Last thing I will say about Ariel, you said he's been doing it for the last 100 years, but 13 years straight, he's been voted journalist of the year. And like, that's something that like right before we got on, I'm watching him interview Jamal Hill ahead of his fight. And it was just like the questions that he asks and how he just allows the guests to feel comfortable, and then like just like they'll just share like this dude is about to start crying on the pod because like he just act like he is making them feel comfortable enough to like share information, and like that's something that I strive to be like. And so I think it's kind of interesting when a fighter like Patty, who just got to like a level that he's on right now after Ariel has been putting this dude on a show from before he was in the UFC, but for now him to ask Ariel for a paid interview, that's just kind of mind blowing to me because I would never ask anybody, I would never pay anybody for an interview or ask anybody to pay me for an interview. You know, that's just kind of like that's not ethical when it comes.
I've always thought Ariel and kind of Nate Diaz. I've almost attached the two of them together because I remember Nate used to not do a lot of interviews, but he did do a lot with Ariel Helwani, and I remember Ariel got a lot of behind the scenes with him and access that no one else got. And I always felt like the two of them did a good job of pushing each other quite a bit more back in the heyday of the last 10 years or so.
But you know why Nate Diaz felt comfortable with Ariel to even do that? Because he sees a lot of these dudes are just out here just like trying to do it for the picture, trying to do it for X, Y, and Z. It's not about that. It's about actually telling people's story. And if I'm gonna sit here, if I'm gonna be vulnerable with somebody, I want to do it with somebody that I actually like rock with. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And I love when Sean Corning says, "Julian, the new Ariel, you killing this shit, man."
Respect. But I respect that. I appreciate that. And ultimately, as I'm like going through this journey, and like I appreciate you for just creating this platform so we could do this on a week-to-week basis. But as I'm going along this journey, I'm watching people like Ariel. I want to be like him because like his rapport with the fighters, like you could tell like people genuinely care about this dude. You know what I'm saying? Because he genuinely cares about them. He's not trying to catch somebody, make somebody look bad. Like when I talk to anybody in the NFC, I'm not trying to make you look bad. I want people to be able to connect with you. And so I think that's the difference between Ariel and a lot of these other MMA journalists. Some views are just like doing it just because like they're really corny in real life. And they want to be cool. They want to be attached to these guys. But Ariel's doing it because he wants to really tell these guys stories. And, like, I respect that.
So if I'm Discount Dana, what's your name? Something Helwani, something Ariel?
Average Ariel.
We're gonna Ariel with the nickname. What's that?
I'm Average Ariel.
Average Ariel. I like that.
I don't even feel comfortable saying that because I'm different. I'm Julian Virgin, man. I'm Julian Virgin. This is me. I'm in my own lane. But I think it's important for all of us to see people that we like and then want to try like take the good from what they do and just add it to ours. Like I'm telling you, when I was just watching Ariel's show, I was like literally locked into like the details, the questions, how he just like backed up and let people talk. And like, that's important to me.
Yeah, I agree.
So with that said, everybody, welcome to NFC Now, the official NFC Fight Podcast. This is show number 13 as we have our referee discussion. Do we have somebody in the queue?
Man, we got two people in the queue. We got Jimmy Neely and Jason Collins. Jason's a little early as a 7:35, but Jimmy Neely, we had him first. So if Jimmy's ready, Jimmy, I see your name down there. I just don't see your, I would say pretty face, ugly face. Let me see if I got you in there.
Ladies and gentlemen, we would like to introduce and welcome referee and just all around. You're a competitor too, Jimmy Neely, to the NFC Podcast. Jimmy, how you living?
Good, doing good, my friend. Not so much a competitor anymore. But I still train vigorously. So,
indeed, you definitely look like you train. You look like you're still well in shape, man. But as I was doing my research for today's show, man, I saw that you are a kickboxer. A black belt in Taekwondo.
Yeah, that's where I got my start back in the 90s. We were some of the first people to really start jiu-jitsu back in 96, 97 because nobody knew what it was then. So I'd already had my black belt in Taekwondo, and then after the first couple of UFCs come over, I was like, man, I got to learn that crap. I said, this is the future. And boom, here we are today.
Indeed. Dave?
I see the UFC banner behind you. Where's the NFC banner?
Well, I'm still waiting on that from you. There was actually one that you left at the Pink Pony for me, but I don't know what happened to
it. The girl that was the model got to take it home. She's a little better looking than you are. So
yeah,
it was her honor.
And I had a spot right over here beside the TV. Yeah, I got Conor McGregor standing here, but I had that NFC one ready over here in the other corner. So we'll see what we can do next.
While you're pointing at that, I've got a robe.
That's nice.
Worn by Muhammad Ali, but it's a fake signature, so we're not going to talk about that. I'll tell everyone it's a real signature, so that doesn't matter.
Hey, it's your room.
Looks like we both have the Mann's room or some memorabilia.
Yeah, buddy.
How did you? I know you're you and Jason Collins. You're from South Carolina. How did you get into reffing? What made you start reffing at the beginning?
Well, technically, I mean, well, actually, I'm from Tennessee, born and raised there. I've been in Charleston now for 10 years, but, you know, when MMA started to be a mainstream, when, say, the first season of Ultimate Fighter, I guess is what you could say, I looked at my buddies. I said, hey, it's time. We opened our school. We started then training our fighters. I stepped in as a fighter. MMA was actually illegal in Tennessee until I was 31 years old. So my first sanctioned fight, I was 31. So my window was very, very, very narrow, I guess you could say. So competed as a fighter for years and years, and then as a coach as well. Then as soon as I stepped out of the cage as a fighter, literally 2 weeks later, I started refereeing, and it just was a natural fit. So I've been reffing now. This 2023 will be 17 years now. So
you're about 48 now?
49, buddy. I'm 48, but 49 this coming year. So.
And then how many states are you licensed in, or how many states do you ref or judge in?
Well, I mean, I've reffed and judged in Alabama, Georgia, Tennessee, Virginia, Kentucky, Florida, North Carolina. So just big on the region thing, but licensing is the easy part. You can get licensed at the drop of a hat, any state, if they just offer you the work. So.
Again, ladies and gentlemen, Jimmy Neely joining us here on NFC Now on our NFC referees discussion show. Jimmy, we appreciate you joining us. Jimmy, one thing I always realize about you, man, and I'm gonna be very honest, man. There's something I really, really like you. I always appreciate when you're K-shot at any NFC events, man, because your passion shines through. It's like I could feel it. I know everybody else is passionate about martial arts, man, but like you wear it, you know, you're sweating, you're in there, like you're just so engaged, man. Like, where does that passion, where does that burn and desire come from?
Well, that's me, man. Everything I do in life, if I'm going to do it, man, I'm doing it full force. I give my all to it. Just like getting me into refereeing, that was the thing. I felt like I had a lot to contribute, and next step for me was refereeing, and, you know, making sure fighters are protected first off, make sure the rules are followed. You know, myself and all these other referees around here tonight, we all put a lot of time into our training to make sure we're up to date on the latest rule changes, anything. So it's all about just making sure it's done the right way. And it really bothers me to know I'm not reffing thinking it might not be done the right way. So I have to step back sometimes on that. But yeah, just passion, man.
It shines through every time, man. And I remember, you know, just anytime that you are K-shot, I always have a lot of questions. I'm always shooting them at you.
And that's good.
And just so I'm just understanding what I'm seeing and why you're making certain decisions. To be clear, how are fights scored? What are those 3 Ds?
Okay, you all said it perfectly a minute ago. The 3 Ds, damage is your most important thing always. Dominance and then duration, okay? And we usually, when we're talking the 3 Ds, it's mainly when we're really talking about a 10-8 round. So that's when you really want to, if you're questioning a 10-8 round, this is what we always tell everybody. If 2 Ds are present, you must consider a 10-8 round. But if all 3 are considered or present, there is a 10-8 round. So that's what we're looking at. But just to give the 10-9, to give the nod, yes, you're looking at those 3 things. What one punch did more damage versus the other punch? What takedown did damage? When we say damage, a takedown can do damage not just physically and leaving scars, but it can wear them out, like their muscles being tired. It can take their breath away when they get dropped. That's considered damage, and judges have to be able to see that. So a lot of things go into that.
Is one more important than the other? Is one like the first factor you look at, then the second factor, then the third?
Well, I think damage is because it's the easiest one to see. Like you said, Julian, when Patty got his face was clean, but by God, he's got whiplash today, I bet. So every time he got cracked, his neck went back. That's damage. It might not be physical on his face, but that's damage. And that's what judges are supposed to be looking for.
And is that the same in MMA and kickboxing, or is there 2 separate?
Well, yeah, it is the same, but like you said earlier, we don't count strikes no more. That's exactly right. We're still looking for combinations, technique, and the damage that lands from these techniques. If this guy threw 20 punches, but only 10 of them did something, but this guy threw 13 and all 13 did something, who do you think wins? I say the 13. So that's kind of where we're looking at.
Now, damage is all, you know, it is subjective. So, you know, I'm assuming when you see decisions like that, Patty versus Jared Gordon, you could maybe sympathize or empathize a little bit more with the judging on that, or no?
To be honest with you, and I don't ever. Older referees are like this. And judges, we don't ever want to talk down toward another judge or referee, but I scored it totally different. Patty Pimblett did not win that fight. He might have won the first round, but he definitely lost second and third. And
now,
I was full of
to that point that you just made about never wanting to talk down to other referees or judges, is that like an unspoken code that y'all have, or?
Well, it should be, but many still do it. But I'm not here to bash somebody. Like I said, we're all in this business together to get better. So another judge or ref saying, "Oh, you did it wrong," is not going to help nobody. But also, there needs to be some accountability. So, and that's where open scoring comes in on some places. Also, like you all mentioned a minute ago, and I commented in the comments, Gamma International. When you ref a show for Gamma International or judge, you have note cards that you have to turn in with your scorecard. So it's like you're writing, this strike did this. You're making little notes, but you turn it in. So if there's ever a doubt, the people go back and look, well, this is what he had on his notes, and it justifies what he's scoring. And Justin Brown and I have talked about going ahead and implementing that in U.S. more on our Gamma shows, because it's just a great way of keeping people held accountable.
And for people that don't know what Gamma is, and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, because you are, I don't know if you're BFFs or just very good friends. I don't know that category when you're a grown man, what you call each other, but you're very good friends with Justin Brown, who I believe is the head of Gamma, which does the kids MMA fighting, which I like. But also you guys, whenever one of the states here does an all amateur show, and unfortunately Georgia's not at that point yet. I think South Carolina is, and Tennessee is with Tim Loy and areas. When you do an all amateur show, you don't have to, well, you go through the athletic commission, but all the paperwork and referees and everything else goes through Gamma. So you register with the state athletic commission, but then everything else goes through Gamma. And you're saying with those, you guys have to keep score and turn in the scorecards.
Yeah. We keep everything in a big file, just like everybody else does. We have it on demand if somebody needs it. But yes, it's the same. Yeah, we're still under the state jurisdiction and guidelines, but it just helps provide another avenue of sanctioning with insurance, things like that. We do it all the same, but we follow all the state rules. We might add a couple extra rules for fighter safety at that, especially the youth MMA. And safety is always going to be our biggest thing.
And I was actually going to ask you about the youth MMA, because last month it came to the Georgia Athletic Commission. Right now it's on hold. It's punted, whatever you want to call it, unfortunately, right now. Again, I'll say I do like it. I'm jealous you guys do it in other states. For people that don't know, before we go back to you into refereeing, tell us about the Gamma kids fights, the rule set, how safe you've seen them be, a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's the perfect thing. It's actually the future. If you think about this, we're behind the world in this so bad. The rest of the world's been doing this for years. We're just now getting into it to where they're actually training the youth to do MMA instead of just kickboxing and wrestling. We're giving them that avenue a little bit earlier. It also helps to get coaches and athletes together younger and longer. So you got an athlete that's 9, 10 years old, you're training them, you're getting them to go to these tournaments, you're building this relationship that could go into their pro career as MMA later. So you're building bigger relationships, but also we are teaching these coaches and stuff how to do this at this safer rule set. MMA is MMA. It is fighting, but we're taking out the most violent part of it, like the head strikes and stuff like that. We're just doing body strikes, stuff like that. Submissions, only certain submissions allowed. We even went this year to adopt the guillotine can only be used if there's one arm in now, just to protect the trachea a little bit. Just little adaptations to make it safer. And then the referees that do these tournaments are actually even a little more trained to look more toward the safety, because these kids might not know that they're already stuck in this submission and can't get out when we already know there's no coming out. So instead of letting that arm break or hyperextend it, we go ahead and know to step in and move on.
Before we go any further and move on in the show, we're going to make some quick adjustments. If you could you just move your camera just a little bit to the right?
Well, see,
to the right of your face. To the right of your face. Keep perfect. You may not be able to see it on your side, but we're on a 3 screen, and you were kind of like you were kind of in the center, And we want to make sure we see all of Jimmy Neely here on NFC now.
You don't need to see all of Jimmy Neely. Half of he's good enough for anybody.
Yeah, just chin up. We good. We good. Chin up, man. It's all
man,
good.
Like I said, I just didn't see how it was looking right there. So
you good. You good. Again, ladies and gentlemen, Jimmy Neely joining us here on NFC Now, our referees discussion show. You talk about Gamma MMA, kids MMA becoming, a thing more in the mainstream for kids to actually start learning and growing. I agree with David. I think that is important. Why do you think other countries were early to it, and why do you think USA is so late on it?
To be honest with you, I'm 100% not sure why we were so late, but it's mainly about Olympic recognition. So for us to take MMA to the Olympics like we're working hard to do, we have to be showing the Olympic Committee that we're training our youth to be doing this stuff to come up. And if we don't have a program for that, so that's why Justin Brown has done such a great job in the United States. A lot of people don't know what he's done. This man has done so much for this movement to get us ready for Olympic recognition. And that's the main thing. You just got to have people involved and get trained right.
That's awesome, man. I think it's definitely important moving forward because, I would love to see MMA in Olympics. But go ahead.
Yeah, that's basically it. It's mainly just about getting them trained up, trained correctly, coached correctly. Like I said, we're training the coaches as well. MMA is its own animal. But changing it to get the kids involved and making sure the parents aren't so worried about it. Sorry, my girl's yelling at me.
Sound like a dog, not a girl.
Well, Mom. But anyway, so just to make sure the coaches are doing it the right way and training these kids to be ready for it, to get them ready for the next level. So like I said, it's a big thing going in place, but it's definitely taken off.
I was going to say the reason I like it is because when you look at MMA compared to other sports, or MMA or kickboxing compared to other sports you do high school. Let's just say baseball. You play baseball in middle school, high school, college, AAA league, and then you go to the major leagues. Football is similar, basketball is similar. You go to ODP camp or whatever. Fighting is the only sport that you can start fighting, just using Georgia's example, when you're 18 years old. These fighters look to me and say, when should I go pro? And in Georgia, you can go pro after you have 5 fights and a winning record. That's the only requirement for going pro. So you can get 5 fights and a winning record in a year and a half if you're fighting often. And it's crazy. In a year and a half, you can call yourself a professional athlete in cage fighting. But if you compare that to basketball, it takes you 15 or 20 years. So exactly. That's why I like people doing amateur boxing or amateur jiu-jitsu or now kids MMA, because it allows them to do it for 10 or 15 years. And if you imagine a kid that grows up through high school wrestling, middle school wrestling, we've seen what kind of domination they have over other fighters. It's night and day. And I think this is going to make the guys that much better.
Yeah, you said it perfect. That's exactly why we do it. I mean, you just said a pro fighter been training 6 months. Yeah, he gets his wins and goes pro. But what if he had been training since he was 12 years old? Now he's more veteran. He's ready to, face anything that's going to come to him. So, no, that's perfectly said, David.
Jimmy Neely, again, joining us here on NFC Now. Jimmy, now you're always in the cage or in the ring with 2 other fighters, man. Like you're the third person in there. And I think a lot of times we don't realize that there's 3 people in there. It's not just 2 people fighting. It's also you. Now, what goes through your mind before a fight starts and as you're watching the fight and the action take place, man? What kind of things are you thinking before you as a referee have to intervene?
Well, the biggest thing, I try not to have any kind of preconceived things in my head, like, oh, God, this guy's going to get killed. Never think that. I try not to really look at the card before I even go because I don't want to think, well, this guy's horrible and this guy's good. And so got to get that out of there. Next thing I want to think about is I don't want to do anything in there. The less I have to do, the less I'm involved, means it's better trained fighters, better fight for everybody. So my job is to stay out unless I have to be there. So it's just a matter of, experience, going longer and longer, knowing when to get in there, when to get out, back up, get closer. There's really no way to really describe it. So
that's fascinating. And, when I watch referees work, I'm always curious about the moment they decide to jump in. To me, have you ever broken up a pair of fighting dogs?
Oh yeah, but
it's like, damn, I gotta, like, you kind of playing double dutch. I don't want to get in there, but you still gotta go. Like that moment before you actually hop in and wave it off. What is that moment like?
Well, it's me being a retired fighter, so I I know that whether this fighter's in trouble, whether he does or not, most of the time. I always say the best refs are retired fighters, but that's just something I have. I just kind of know. But the biggest thing I always say is I try to stay far enough back to make sure I know. I've got enough time to, maybe I can back up a little bit. If you're too close, can't restart the fight if you stop it early. So.
Have you ever gone home and, like, as you've been driving home, like, damn, I might have stopped that fight a tad too early?
I have, but then I really think about it. I would much rather stop it early than let somebody take an extra hit to the head and be in a wheelchair or something on my fault. So I'll eat that all day.
And you said you would eat that, but, like, how do you take criticism? Because I'm sure you've been criticized before, yelled at by a trainer or a fighter. Like, you're human too. How do you take that?
Well, I take it. You said it exactly like I said it. How I say it to coaches. Hey, I'm human. I'm not saying I'm wrong, but I could have made a mistake, and I definitely will review it. I will let other referees review it as well, and if I am, I'll do some more training. I'm here to get better. But from what I saw in the cage, it was 100% the right call.
Indeed.
Where did you get your training? For you, did you go to Blake Grice's ABC class, or I know I brought in Big John years ago, but where have you gone to get your licensing?
I've trained with John. I've probably done 5 classes with Blake now. I've done 2 with Kevin McDonald. Most refs do it every 2 years. That's what the requirement is in Georgia and South Carolina. But I'd say all 4 of us on this tonight do it at least yearly. It's just something. It makes no sense to wait 2 years. Just keep doing it. Keep doing it. Keep doing it. If it's available, go do it. So
I agree. And what is the biggest fight card that you've been a part of? I mean, I'd love to say NFC, but I think we both realize that's probably not the biggest fight. I mean, what is the biggest fight that you've done, and how far do you want to go in this sport? Is your goal to be a Blake Grice in Kuwait and Bellator, or are there different goals because your job and family and stuff?
Well, I mean, all of our goals is just keep doing the bigger shows. COVID has kind of put a stop on my bigger shows for now, just because UFC's got the Apex Center now. So most of those shows they would do in Nashville or Greenville, South Carolina or whatever, they're not doing them no more because they already got a venue that they don't have to. But, I'm still going to get some bigger shows in the future. But I'll be honest with you, I really enjoyed the PFL. Doing the PFL there in Atlanta, there was a different atmosphere. The electricity bled over to me. I get excited in there. Like I said, I really like that. But I think I've done 6 or 7 UFCs now. So yeah, none of them are really bigger than the other to me. Like I said, it's just a matter. I'm still going to do the same job no matter how big the show is. So.
And outside the cage, for the people that don't know you, tell them what you do for a living up there in South Carolina. Like, what's your normal job?
Well, my day-to-day job, I sell pest control. I've been in pest control for about 10, 11 years. So I basically sell pest control through the day and then referee on the weekends.
That's so dope to me. Like, when I see Jimmy Neely, and if I saw you on the street, I would only think Jimmy Neely, the referee. You know what I'm saying? So I think that's so fascinating. Amazing question, David. For us to get to just know who Jimmy Neely is, man. Like, what else you do? That's fascinating.
Well, see, that just goes to show you the referees that are getting in this to make money and get rich. It's not going to happen. You got to have another career. So, like I said, I make decent money refereeing, but like I said, it's not my bread and butter. It don't pay my bills. So.
Indeed. Now, you've been doing this for a good bit. You said 23 years almost?
No, it's starting 17 years this year.
Got you. For 17 years, you've been doing this, man. Like, could you maybe speak on some of the fights that you've refereed that you've actually enjoyed, just being there in the cage for? Are you able to?
I don't want to show any bias toward any fight or another, but yeah, I'll be honest with you. I enjoyed the World Championships in Amsterdam, doing the international thing, seeing the fighters from the different countries and the way the coaches do things versus we do it. It opened my eyes to a lot of things over there. So
fascinating. Dave?
Yeah, I think I hammered out all the questions that we had for you, and going over the rules with MMA kickboxing people. We got Jason Collins on, Jeff Kemp, Nate Mann, Clay Bennett for jiu-jitsu. I think Nate is the only one that does MMA, kickboxing, boxing, and jiu-jitsu. Do you referee, or I think in jiu-jitsu we call it a referee? Do you referee any jiu-jitsu up there?
Not anymore. I just MMA. I used to referee some jiu-jitsu back in the day, but And same thing with boxing. I just got bored with boxing, guys.
My next question was boxing. If you do,
I'm a high energy guy. I literally will fall asleep in a boxing match. So if you're not kicking and punching, I don't want no part of it. But now take that back. I am bare knuckles legal in South Carolina now, so I'm scheduled to do a show next month. So we'll see what happens. But that's a little more exciting than gloves standing in the middle. So we'll see what happens.
So you and Jason are the only ones in South Carolina where bare knuckle is legal now. Do you have to go to another class to get approved to do that?
It's the same ABC certifications. We just got to do the boxing side of it. So just ABC is the kind of the governing body on all the rules, even for bare knuckles. So.
One of my final questions for you, man, before you came on, I was telling David how I look to Ariel as like somebody that I want to strive my game after. Is there another referee, whether that be in the UFC or just on a regional or local scene that you've seen that's like, I like the way that man handles or a woman handles her business?
Well, to be honest with you, I mean, we all got our start watching John McCarthy. John was the guy. He was basically the guy that started this for us. So of course it's got to be Big John. I mean, and of course, Blake and I, working in different, actually Blake reffed me fighting when I was still a fighter. So that's tells you, there was a little bit of a relationship there, but me being in Tennessee for so long and then him up there, referees are weird. They're kind of like territorial. They don't want another ref coming in their territory.
Interesting.
Blake and I kind of were like that at the beginning until we finally worked together. And then it was like, man, great team. Blake and I still talk now a lot. I have questions. We communicate a lot. So Blake's another one that I didn't see that would be like a mentor to me or help me out. But later on, as our relationship got better, I used a lot from him. And same thing with Kevin McDonald. I was always able to reach out to Kevin when I needed to. So like I said, there's more. These guys are really down to earth and stuff like that. Where John, you couldn't reach out to him as much as you could these guys. He would answer questions if I needed, but I just always felt like I was bothering him if I needed to really ask a question. But yeah, so those three are probably my three.
You said referees are territorial. Fascinating.
Yeah, imagine that. More refs than there are work. So
indeed. Jimmy Neely, final thoughts, man. Something you want to leave us in the NFC community with before we part ways?
Well, yeah, one thing. You was talking about coaches, explaining coaches how rules and stuff work. I recommend all coaches, if they have never done an ABC or referee judge class, sign up for one. That way you understand what these judges, what these referees are doing, so you don't have to make an ass of yourself cage side. Okay? So it just really helps to understand, learn what we're looking for. If you know what we're looking for, it's easier for you to teach your fighter to fight that way. So.
And I will second that before we hang up with you in a second. I've told the athletic commission, I've told Matt Woodruff, they should make it mandatory for every single gym that's licensed here in Georgia for the head trainer to attend Blake Grice's class. As much as I hate sending money to Blake Grice or business to him, I think every single trainer for a gym should be required to do that every 2 years. And then they filter that information down to their trainers and their fighters, because I think a lot of them lead their fighters the wrong way and tell them they were robbed and this and that. Yep. And they're just simply not educated on the scoring system, unfortunately.
Perfectly said, David. But you also got to remember, Blake's doing the Ironman, so he needs that money to get to Arizona and places. So let's keep.
I think he did a GoFundMe for his first marathon.
That's
support a hustler. Jimmy Neely, man, we appreciate you joining us here on NFC Now, man. Until the next time, till we see you, K-Shot, man. Thank you.
All right, gentlemen, I appreciate it. And these next guys are awesome. Love them all. Listen to them as well. So appreciate you guys.
Respect. Got him off.
Say go Vols. Got to hit him with that.
That's wow, go Vols. He's in South Carolina. He's a Gamecock guy.
He's a huge Tennessee fan.
I
think he said he went to school there, grew up there. But yeah,
I meant to ask him about his East Tennessee martial arts. That was a gym that he opened. He said he opened a gym, but he explained it. I gotta say, Dave, you asked a question during that interview, and I was like, I had to write down. That was a great question, man. The question where you asked him, how far does he want to go with this? You know, I was like, damn, that was an amazing question, Dave. Like I had to write that down. Make sure I give you your flowers.
Are you going to steal that with Jason and Jeff in a second, or I get to ask it?
No, I'll let you have that question for today. I just want to tell you that was a good one. That was a good one, because you don't think about referees like working to make it to the next level, but it only makes sense, when you actually think about it. Like, yeah, you do want to be on a big show,
Yeah, I mean, their goal, I've always said for everyone, the fighters should use NFC to get to the next venture. Julian Virgin should be an announcer for NFC to go to the next bigger thing. Jason Collins and Jeff Kemp should be using NFC to launch their career into whatever it is. They should be building a highlight video if that's their goal. I don't know if that's their goal. I guess let's talk to Jason and find out what his goal in mixed martial arts is, or if he's already reached his goal.
We'll find it right now, man. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to NFC Now. We would like to welcome Jason Collins to the NFC Now podcast. I love the smile, man. You happy?
Yeah, what's up, man? What's up? You guys hear me okay?
Yeah, man. You coming through clear, man. It looks like you're in a well-lit area. We appreciate you joining us. Where are you at right now?
Yeah, I'm in my office, man. I'm in upstate South Carolina, and I have a home office here. I work from home from time to time, and I have an option to come to the office every now and then. So I sent my wife and kids to volleyball tonight, so my 8 and 5-year-old didn't come running in here and barking like a dog like Jimmy's kids.
Is this your first time being on a pod?
Actually, no, I've been on a podcast before, but this is the better of the two. So NFC all the way.
Yeah, and that leads to my question. We talked to Jimmy and Neely a little bit about what does he do for a living. So tell us, what does Jason Collins do outside the cage for a living?
So I'm a manufacturer and territory manager for Atlas Roofing Company. So we manufacture shingles and underlayment for contractors for a roof on your house. And I control the upstate of South Carolina, Western North Carolina, and Columbia, South Carolina, that market down there as well.
How big are these solar panels getting these days? Are they big up there, or is that not something you handle?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, they're big here. We're not. I don't work for the company that manufactures them, but they're getting pretty big on the roofs and stuff, and it's only going to get better. There's a couple of companies out there that actually are starting to produce solar shingles now, and it's going to continue to just to evolve. But as long as there's taxable rebates that are involved, and obviously putting money in the homeowners' pockets, everybody's going to love that. I'm worried about the 20-year game plan and what they're going to do, but so far so good. I mean, it's working out for the people that have them on the roofs, but there's some concerns there, but they'll work it out. I don't want to be the guinea pig, that's for sure.
That's what's up again, ladies and gentlemen. Jason Collins joining us here on NFC Now. Just got through explaining what he does for a living. I want to know why. Why do you referee fights here in the Southeast?
So it's funny because Jimmy touched on it, but my path to the cage wasn't a fighter. 2010, I walked into a jiu-jitsu school and trained in the gi for a few years and loved it, but made my way to an MMA school and started training at an MMA school. But I'm 42 now with a wife and 2 kids and a career. And man, these guys are American Day gladiators, men and women. And, it just wasn't my path for me. I was older and, I wanted to contribute and I wanted to provide the fairest and safest opportunity for these people to compete. And so I decided to step into the cage as an official.
When did you make that decision?
When did I make that decision?
Yeah,
roughly 6 years ago. And I started, the path to the cage is not easy for everybody. It's not a cut and dry process. You don't literally just go take an ABC course and get certified and walk into the cage and put on a black shirt. There's a lengthy process there. And, but the first step to that is to go start taking ABC courses. Obviously Blake is our rep in the area, and you start taking the courses. You work your way into some sort of shadow program, whatever your state prefers. And listen, it's when you go to shadow, you're not going to get paid. You're going to buy the clothes. You're going to wear a black pair of pants, probably, and a black polo, and spend your own money to get there, and buy tickets to get in sometimes, and you go in there and you do a lengthy shadow process, and then at some point when they feel like you're ready, they're going to put you in the cage for a fight, and then you just better not mess up that one fight, because that might be your only opportunity, and then you just start going from there.
Do you remember your first fight and what show it was on?
Yeah, I do remember my first fight, and it was a 3-round war. And I remember, believe it or not, Jimmy Neely and Blake Grice were there and mentored me. And I'll never forget Blake yelling at me in between the round, yelling at me to get closer. Apparently, I was standing too far back, and I'll never forget him yelling. And but I'll never forget watching a fighter take a 1-2 combination down the middle, and the blood spray went off, and I was like, oh wow, this is real. And it was a war, and went all 3 rounds, went to a decision, and I'll never forget it, man. It was great.
Fascinating.
And when you were talking about the graduation process, I think we've seen that with a couple people lately. We've seen it with Monica Ridgway that went from being an inspector to a judge right now. We've seen it with Jack May, who went from an inspector, obviously the shadow judge and the judge. We even saw it with Eric Bullock. If you guys remember him, he went as an inspector for a very long time, shadow judge, shadow ref. And then I think he ref 2 fights at Tannery Row before moving to Kentucky. So he's out now for a while. But when people ask me how do you become a ref or judge, I tell them first hit up Matt Woodruff with the Athletic Commission. Yeah. Like you said, you are going to shadow as an inspector or a judge or a referee, but it really doesn't take long to climb up that ladder. You know, if you're good, you're dependable, and you know what you're doing.
Well, yeah, and you know, every official is gonna kind of fill you out and feel that they're confident, because you know we're all a close knit group, and you know, we all don't really, you know, at the end of the day for your state, you know, Matt's going to have the final say, so you're going to have your input there as well. But you know, we all look and everybody values our opinions too. You know, we don't want to put somebody in the cage we feel is not ready. And not everybody's path is the same. You know, somebody could shadow 8 shows, somebody could shadow, you know, 2 years, and somebody, you know, could sign up, take ABC course, you know, get certified to be an official and, you know, not get much opportunity from there. But, you know, based on a shadow program, you know, you don't just show up and just start shadowing referees. You know, when I showed up, I was willing to do anything, and I would check fighters into the cage, check for nails and fingernails and toenails and cups and mouthpieces. I would sit beside judges, do mock cards, and let the judge tell me whether they were correct or not. And you know, and there's not like I said, not a clear path to the cage as a referee. And you know, I highly recommend, you know, for you guys, you know, become an inspector, become a judge. Definitely do the timekeeping position, do it all. You know, I'm licensed for every position. I'm licensed for a timekeeper, a judge, and a referee, and I do it all. And I think it's a big feather in my cap that I can do it all. And I think it's served me well. You know, I was given that advice a long time ago, and I took it to heart. And I can do anything you need me to do cage side.
That's dope, man. I think it is. It probably does serve you well, man. Just when you're driving home at night after a show. As I'm sitting here listening to you talk, it just makes me realize, like, dang, like every time I see you at an NFC show, you had to like really make time for that. You know, being that we just expect refs to be at the shows, right? But like it really making me think now, like, whoa, you have to like get up, get ready, tell your kids, wife and kids, like, hey, I'm about to make this drive all the way out to Georgia to ref these fights. And you don't get a lot of like love and shine. Like when you go home, when you're driving home at the end of the night, man, making that trek back home to South Carolina, what gives you like that sense of like, okay, like I feel good about my time spent?
You know, first and foremost, you know, I love the sport. And when I got involved in this, you know, I thought, okay, I'm gonna go in here and be an MMA referee. But that's, you know, you're not just MMA. You know, you guys put on Muay Thai, kickboxing. You know, you really become a combative referee in combative sports, and it's jiu-jitsu, combative jiu-jitsu, it's kickboxing, Muay Thai, and all that. And first and foremost, I'm a fan, and I just love what I do. It's worth the drive. You know, it's something that as long as I love what I'm doing, I'm going to continue to do it. And driving down to Atlanta for me is dropping a hat just to get down there and have an opportunity to compete and watch the NFC shows. Man, they're great.
And I was going to ask you, how far of a drive is it from your house to I don't know, say if we do a show in Buckhead or Midtown?
It doesn't matter, David. I'll come down for you. So, just to be fair,
for you.
I'm 3 hours away, and it's straight Interstate 85. So I hop on 85, and it's literally just a straight shot down through there, and then I'm there probably within 3 hours. Just depends in traffic. And you know, for shows, you never want to be late, so you always end up leaving a little bit early, and you know, get some gas and maybe a rest stop on the way. And it's 3 hours. It's this role, you know, you can drive all over, so you get used to the drive. It's okay.
And to explain that to people, when they see a NFC fight, doors at 6, fights at 7, the referees and judges don't just pop in at 6:30. You know, we do the fighters meeting about 5:30. So you referees and judges are usually there by 5 o'clock to 5:15, give or take, which means you're leaving your hometown, South Carolina, about 2 p.m. The fights end usually, I don't know, call it on average 11:30 to 12. So you're probably not getting home till 3 or 4 in the morning. You know, that's a hell of a lot of work on a Friday or Saturday outside of the normal job.
Yeah, I mean, again, we love what we do, and we do this for the passion. Obviously, like Jimmy said, we're not retiring. We work full-time jobs here, and we just enjoy it. And I want to provide a safe and fair space for the guys, the male and females, to compete, at the level they want to compete at. And yeah, I mean, it's a long ride sometimes, and it's also a lonely ride sometimes, But I'll pop on a podcast or put on some music, and next thing you know, you're home, and I just come in here, take a shower, crawl into bed, and up when my kids wake me up, and here we go.
So someone did ask online, what's the craziest or most exciting fight you've had to referee?
So I had a lot of crazy and exciting fights, but I will tell you, one of the more exciting submissions I saw last year was DK Brewer and Quincy Evans at your event. DK had a front choke, and Quincy picks him up and does some kamikaze slam, and DK holds onto it for a submission. And I think it went submission of the year for you guys, and that has been one of the greatest submissions I've seen. But I've had some great fights. I refereed Anthony Pettis versus Stevie Ray this year, and actually Stevie Ray beat Anthony Pettis with what he calls a Scottish twister. That was exciting to see. But I mean, obviously knockouts are great to see. But man, being a jiu-jitsu background and jiu-jitsu guy, I love to see some slick jiu-jitsu on the ground always.
That's actually amazing. And a couple weeks ago, DK Brewer was on the show. David showed that exact submission. So that's right on time. And,
yeah.
And that was a beautiful sub. And yeah, you just even have an opportunity to be in the cage for somebody like Anthony Pettis. He's a legend, no matter if he lost that fight. I'm sure that's young Jason Collins just walking into that jiu-jitsu room probably would have never thought you would have been in the cage with him.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. We're told in our ABC classes, you never know where this journey will take you. And for me to step in the cage to watch Stevie Ray and Anthony Pettis compete was definitely a highlight of my career. And I had another great fight this year between Jared Goodson and Impa. They fought at the Colonial Life Arena here in Columbia, South Carolina, and I knew when I got that assignment that was going to be a banger. Those guys met in the center of the cage, and I was super excited to have that fight as well. Those guys were warriors.
I asked Jimmy Neely. Go ahead.
You go first.
I asked Jimmy Neely about the moment where you have to actually step in and stop a fight or intervene, man. What are those moments like? Because you're the third person in that cage, man. You're responsible for both of those fighters' safety.
Yeah, I mean, it's just again, just going back to us putting referees in the cage. You got to know the proper time to stop that fight. There's always tall tale signs that we look for. And one thing that we talk about a good bit is called diminished spirit, and the eyes and the look of how the fighter is fighting, and are they intelligently defending themselves? Is somebody mounted and taking punches, and are they making intelligent decisions to get out of that position? Other things we look for is are they moving correctly? Is their body mechanics moving correctly? Are they stuck in a turtle position and just covered up and waiting for us to save them? We'll also give commands. I want to see something out of you, blue corner. You got to move red corner. We'll see it. And same thing with submissions. You can see the spirit of somebody, whether they're waiting to give up or whether they're waiting to go to sleep, or they intelligently trying to get out of that. And we look for all that, but it's a split second. I mean, you've just that's the difference with a good referee. You've just got to know when it's time to make that call. You got to have that sense in you, and if you do, great. And if you don't, you're just not going to last long.
When you were talking about that, do you weigh them differently? Do you look at the fighters differently when they're getting ass whooped for an amateur fight, an advanced amateur, for a pro, for the main event, for the title fight? Is there more leniency to guy getting their ass whooped and you letting the fight go longer by where they are?
Well, I mean, yeah, you've got to have some considerations, but you've got to understand that you've got to provide a safe experience for these guys. At the end of the day, we want to make sure these guys go home safe. But I mean, you also got to consider some things. Is this a title fight? Are these guys pros? Are these guys amateurs? You got to look at all that. I'm like Jimmy. I don't study the card and know that this guy's going to be a ground guy, because he might go out there and knock somebody out, and you just don't expect that. So you want to go in with the mindset of having an open mind with these guys. But I mean, yeah, you want to keep in mind who you're reffing here too. I mean, if you've got a couple pros in there and somebody's intelligently defending themselves and nothing's getting through, I mean, you're not going to consider stopping that fight. Now, if the shots are getting through and they're obviously an amateur, and they're just not making intelligent decisions, or they're not moving in the correct position to get out of danger, then we're going to call that. But yeah, I mean, you want to consider, is it a title fight? You want to consider, is this a pro? When you look at all that, but first and foremost, you've got to be safe, and you've got to give them a safe space to work in.
How much do you analyze your performance after the fight is over?
We actually have general conversations afterwards. Like I said, all the referees are tight knit. It's not uncommon for us to get messages from other referees. We actually will watch shows, and it's funny. I catch myself watching the referee more than sometimes than catching myself watching the fight. And we'll message each other and say, good job and what our thoughts are. But everybody, including fighters, we all want to watch ourselves, and we all want to make sure we do a good job. So I mean, yeah, we hold ourselves to a high standard, and for sure, I'm going to study myself and watch what I do, and you got to be open to constructive criticism. And when you do something right, you're going to hear about it. And when you do something wrong, you're going to hear about it. You got to have some tough skin in this job.
Worst thing you've ever done in the ring? Worst call that you ever made? Worst decision?
Oh, man,
that, it was like when you went home, it was like, it's gonna be hard for me to sleep tonight because I know I screwed that up.
Oh man, you put me on the spot. Worst call, man. I can't think of nothing, man. Don't put me out there like that.
Okay.
I just I don't know, man. Maybe the community would come back and say I did something bad.
You're 100%. Now that's all it is.
Yeah.
My question to Jimmy, the same one with you that Julian commended me on, is how far do you want to go with being a referee? Like, what is your goal? UFC, Bellator, take Blake's job in Kuwait? Like, what are different goals that you want to do? And I know you have a full-time job and family, and some people don't understand that, but where do you want to go with this?
I want to go as far as I'm happy. I enjoy every aspect of this. I went to London this year as a timekeeper, which was fantastic. And I thoroughly enjoyed myself over there. But like I said, I like hopping on 85 and going south and coming and seeing you guys too. I just enjoy it. I'm a fan. As long as I continue to love it, I'll go and referee the sanction shows at the fairgrounds with 30 people in the crowd, and then I'll go to an arena with 30,000 people. I mean, all that I enjoy, and as long as I enjoy it, I'm gonna continue to do whatever I do, and then hopefully 10, 20, 30 years down the road, you'll still see me doing this.
Was that a Bellator? Did you say England? Was that a Bellator show?
No, that was a PFL show actually. So I went over to PFL, went over there in Wales, and then scooted over to London and was a timekeeper for them this year.
Is it about the relationships that you're building in here that like kind of helps referees get to the next step? Like, how does that work? Or is it just like, we're just,
for me, I've been in a sport for 6 years, as an official. And, I look up to a lot of guys, Jimmy's, everybody on this podcast, Jimmy and Nate, I've worked with all these guys and obviously Blake and I look at them as in certain ways as mentors, and we all work together. But, no, I mean, I just work hard at what I do and just continue to hope that we continue going in the same direction.
Indeed. Jason Collins joining us here on NFC Now. Jason, before we part ways today, man, we want your final thoughts, man. What do you want to leave the NFC community with today?
Man, I just want to say happy holidays, and I appreciate you guys having me on. And I tell you what, man, I've worked large arenas and listened to the crowds and I'll tell you what, man, I know you guys are gonna laugh when I hear this, but man, there's nothing like being center stage and seeing that second level of fans just screaming down in you. I think some of the loudest shows I've ever been on has been down there at the NFC and just listening to the crowd. It's almost deafening. And to see two cross-town rivals, go at it at the cage, man, that's almost better than the big shows. Guys out there fighting for money when these guys down in Atlanta are fighting for pride, man. I really enjoy the NFC shows, and I appreciate you guys having me down.
And my last question was, when you talked about 6 years you've been in it, when I was doing the Wild Bills fights, those were closer to you, but did you not work with the athletic commission when I was doing Wild Bills?
I was not, actually I was training with some fighters that were going down and fighting at Wild Bills, but I just didn't go down with them. I wasn't a fighter. But no, I didn't do any Wild Bills, man. But if you want to have me down, I'd love to do some.
I ain't going back there. They've gone bankrupt 5 years ago, whatever, and I said goodbye to that one. But yeah, everyone viewed Wild Bills as like kind of the NFC David Oba's coming out party. Everyone remembers that. 3,000 people every 6 weeks or whatever, and I know for the referees and judges, it was huge to be in there as well. And I was just thinking, I didn't know you and Jimmy back at that point in time. Looks like Jimmy's been in it a very long time. I guess you 6 years, and I think I left Wild Bills probably about four or 5 years ago. I don't even know. I'll have to look back, but I know for everyone that was kind of like a benchmark back in the day.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard a lot about you guys. I mean, how many shows you put on now, David? 120, something like that.
I think the number is at 152. But
yeah, I mean,
the thing is, I didn't keep track the first 4 years. The first 4 years, I was put on shows and I didn't use a number. So if you count those, 152 plus 40, probably about 190. But in the numbers, 152.
Yeah, I mean, you guys are doing well down there. It seems like just the time I've been in it, these shows come and go. They put on 10, 15, 20 fights and then they fizzle out and then they eventually pop their way back up, man. But you guys have done well at it. There is a show I went to, and telling you I'm a fan. I'll tell you how far back. 93. I went to the movie store like everybody else, rent some VHSs and got UFC 1 and 2. Begged my mom to rent them, and from then I was hooked. But I did attend a show back in 2001 in Augusta, Georgia. It was half kickboxing and it was half MMA, and it was actually in a boxing ring. And that was my first experience at going to an MMA show, and attended them for a while before I decided to get moving in that direction. But yeah, they're great, man. Georgia's put on some good shows in the past.
Hey, well, Jason, we appreciate you joining us this evening here on NFC Now, man. Just taking your time, and just most importantly, just taking your time on a regular show that we have. Like you just speaking to us about that 3-hour drive, it just makes us have makes me have a whole different level of appreciation for the work that you do, not only to keep the fighters safe, man, but just to invest your time into the NFC.
Yeah, man, we appreciate you guys, and thank you for the opportunity for us to be here and do our thing, man. Like I said, you guys have been great to us, and we appreciate you up in South Carolina. And if you ever come this way, we're going to treat you with some of that Southern hospitality like you do us down there.
Indeed.
Appreciate it, man.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
You notice we haven't had anyone in the car tonight. There's been no car interviews so far. Like the
yeah, everybody's looking pretty good. I mean,
we got some dapper referees.
Hey, yeah, the referees came. I mean, the referees they're a little bit more of the mature crowd too. So you got to give them some love and respect, man. You never know. Clay Bennett may show up in the whip.
I know Clay Bennett's going to be in the office. I already saw Nate. I can see him at the bottom. He's at his house. I can see Jeff Kemp in his studio. So, yeah, we ain't going to have any car interviews tonight. I'm impressed.
One thing that stuck out to me about what Jason just said, man, was diminished spirit.
Mm-hmm.
That is like that hit me. I wonder, like, I'm interested to ask our remaining guests on the show, like, what does diminished spirit look like? Like, what is that? That's the first time I've ever heard that. But, yeah, sometimes you could see, like, when a fighter has given up. From just cage side, but I wonder what that looks like inside the cage.
I think it means like they're getting their ass whooped. They probably turn around and give you their back and they're looking for a way out. And the funny thing is, I think I said it before on the podcast. If you look at No Mas, Roberto Duran in boxing, he quit in boxing. He was made fun of for 100 years for that. Everyone remembers No Mas. But in MMA, and I'm not saying anyone quits in MMA, but it's easier to quit and get out of there in MMA than it is in boxing. And that's, it's just odd.
I talking about that, it looked like Darren Till tapped fairly early. He knew the fight was over and he tapped pretty quick this past fight. That was just one of them that just kind of stuck out to me. And no shame to that. He had a Duplessis on his back, but it just seemed like that was like one of those universal, okay, I'm out of here.
Yeah, and I don't fault it in MMA. I almost wish boxing was more like that. In boxing, you could quit easier if you're getting your ass kicked and you're probably not going to turn this fight around. I mean, not every fight is Arturo Gatti versus Mickey Ward, where you're getting your ass kicked and they can completely change in round 7 or 8 and you can come back and win the fight. There's a lot of boxing fights that you can tell after a few rounds, this guy's going to continue to get murdered, continue to get brain damage, and there should be an easier way out, in my opinion.
Talking about that, I was really happy that Kevin Holland's corner threw the towel against Wonderboy a couple weeks ago, man. Like, because I mean, in the fourth round, I was like, "Yo, stop the fight! The fight needs to be stopped." And then his corner, because he wasn't intelligently defending himself. I don't want to necessarily say the diminished spirit. Yeah, I think that the spirit was diminished if he wasn't getting up off the cage. But that was one of those where I was happy that somebody threw the towel, and I hope we see it more.
Yeah. And I think we had one comment on here. Extremely educating podcast. This is good stuff, and Jason's on point. No one's ever called our podcast before extremely educating.
We asked the necessary questions here, man. And like honestly, I've been learning a lot today, man. Again, diminished spirit. Like I think I'm gonna continue to ask, and I meant to ask Jason about this. The referees being territorial. I think that's pretty fascinating too. But
they like their jobs. I can't blame them. And I was thinking next week we do an OG special, like bring in OGs. And while we're talking about that, it'll probably be a good time to bring in Jeff Kemp. He is kind of an OG of the sport. He's been around for 100 years. And he always brings us candy and gum cage side.
Ladies and gentlemen, we would like to welcome Jeff Kent to the NFC Now Pod. What's up, Jeff?
What's up, man? Thank you guys for having me.
For sure, man. Thanks for joining us here on NFC Now. Yo, have you been on a lot of podcasts before? And are you a fan of the NFC pod?
I do watch it. I've never been on one. I hate my voice.
Okay. Well, welcome. Thank you for joining us here for your first ever podcast appearance.
Are you an OG of the sport? Do you count as an OG by now?
I've got the old part down. Yeah. Yes,
how long have you been around in the fight community here in Georgia? Because I see you every month, but I it's hard for me to keep track of who's been around the longest or forever.
I started reffing back in 2008, so almost 15 years now.
I think that counts as OG. And how did you get started and work your way up? We were talking earlier about being an inspector, a shadow judge, a shadow referee. What was your course like coming up?
I started at a timekeeper. I was with Tony Max. He was reffing at the time. George Jordan was in the sport, so I would ride with George a lot of times, and they needed a timekeeper, so I jumped in. I went and bought my own equipment. I shadowed for about a year, and then finally one day Andy Foster said at Wild Bill's, "Hey, you want to ref one?" I said, "Absolutely, yes, I do."
Why? What even made you even want to jump into that realm? Are you a fighter?
I have not fought. I had back surgery, foot surgery, knee surgery. My body didn't allow me to. I've trained. I'm a black belt, United Karate. I've done since 2000. So I've trained here and there, but not consistent enough to fight. No, my body hasn't cooperated with me. But I've been watching MMA and no holds barred since the early 90s, the old Georgia Mountain Center. And I was at a UFC event in Hollywood, Florida. It was Heath Herring's UFC debut. He left Pride, went to UFC. I was there the night that Rashad Evans knocked out Sean Salmon with a head kick, and I ran into Big John McCarthy. And I was a fanboy. I ran over and got my picture, and he talked. Excuse me. He spoke to me for 20 minutes. We sat there and talked and had a good time, and I was amazed. So I'm like, this dude is the OG. So to talk to me like I was just like almost a friend, I went home and I said, "Hey, let's see what's offered out there." So I went online and looked, and the first course that popped up was his course out in Valencia, California. So I flew out that next February, I believe, and passed the course, and it was hard, but I passed the first time. It was amazing, a great experience. And I came back and I called Andy Foster up. I'm like, "Hey, man, I'm ready to work, man."
Fascinating. Again, ladies and gentlemen, Jeff Kemp joining us here on NFC Now. Just got through explaining how he got into refereeing mixed martial arts. David?
I was going to say, when we've talked about how close-knit the referees are, usually with the fighters, once they join us on the podcast, they get off, and we see them on the bottom and they get off. I actually right now still see Jason Collins and Jimmy Neely, so it is cool seeing them want to actually listen to you. You were on early, wanting to listen to them, so it's cool, the little parts I see about referees and judges and how close-knit you guys are, and sometimes when I mess up, you guys are all talking shit about me together, so I know everyone is very close-knit, and that's a good
straight to you. I think you know that. I come straight to you.
Well, yeah, me and you have talked plenty of times.
I'm very
both OGs in this. But it's funny, when you were talking about you being a timekeeper, I never really viewed how important a timekeeper was until you see people mess up as a timekeeper. And I've gone to every single athletic commission meeting for the last 21 years, even a year or two before I started promoting. Every single month, the third Thursday of every month, I'm down there. And I think in the last year and a half, and it hasn't happened in MMA, it's happened in boxing, I think twice, they've messed up the time. And I remember one time was a female fight in boxing that I think should be 4 rounds, 2 minutes for females. And unfortunately, the timekeeper messed up and it was 4 rounds, 3 minutes, because it was the same as MMA fight. Excuse me, same as the pro boxing for the males, but the female is 1 minute less. And the girl that lost came there and wanted to change her no contest or whatever. And they went over how the timekeeper messed up. And I saw that happen like 3 times last year in meetings, but it was never on a show that Jeff Kemp was the timekeeper.
So far, it hasn't happened. I'm not saying it won't, but it hasn't happened.
When the referees were saying they don't look at the fight card before an event, do you look at the fight card before an event so you know how many rounds? Because you've got MMA,
Never.
You've got Muay Thai, you've got pro, you've got amateur.
Never.
Really? So you just
Why
do
not?
it right there on the spot.
Why not?
I don't want to box. You know, I want somebody to come in that I've seen just, you know, with some heavy hands and, you know, oh, this guy's going to knock somebody out. I don't want to do that. I want to go in clean slate. Everybody starts at 0. I'm not going to give anybody the advantage or the disadvantage. I just want to go in blind, actually.
You're human, Jeff. And I'm sure, you know, they do the face-offs for a reason. I'm not saying that you look at the face-offs, but when you're in the cage after I'm done announcing, you know, this guy and this guy, or this girl and this girl, you can look, you could see who's physically fit. You could see this, you could see that. How do you actually combat that human aspect of you actually being a human and looking, and put that into the back of your head before you the bell rings?
I've seen too many things happen. I mean, you can see the guy that just comes out just shredded, just, you know, this crazy physical shape and get choked out in 35 seconds. And then I see a guy come out with a beer gut and he's grinds out 5 rounds. You can't judge him by that.
Indeed.
I agree. You can just point to me versus Jamonte. 5'4", chubby versus 6'4", ripped.
Case in point.
I agree. I try to plug that at least once every fight in case Julia hasn't noticed it.
Jason Collins was just on the show, man. He mentioned diminished spirit. That's the first time I've ever heard a referee say that, or just even being like said in a martial arts conversation, man. What does diminished spirit mean to you, and what do you like? What do you see in somebody?
It's completely up to them. If I see their body, their mechanics change, their gait change, their will change, they start to turn away. You can kind of there's energy gauges. You can kind of almost see that in some fights, you know, when they start to really back away and not engage like they were in earlier rounds. You can tell.
David asked Jason earlier too about understanding the fight, understanding the situation, understanding whether or not they're amateurs, professionals, the title fight, man. Like how much of that goes into when you actually step in and intervene?
If they're pro, they're getting paid. So, I mean, they'll take a little impact than I would say an amateur. If you have a debut fighter, they're working on Monday. You know, plus you got to look down the road. They have, you know, TBI, CTE. They're things that you can't naturally see, you know, that could be starting on this fight. You know, so you have to really err on the side of caution.
Indeed. Has erring on the side of caution ever had you step in and maybe a tick too early, in your opinion?
Not that I can think of. I'm not sure about that.
And with that, how do you deal with the criticism? Because I'm sure there's some fighters where you've stopped the fight and the fighter tried to contest and yell at you or get mad at you. You've had their trainers or their families. How do you internalize that or deal with that emotion?
Well, I don't look online. I don't care what they have to say. I don't look online. I don't see what the negative comments. I don't care. I've never looked. Now, if in my head I thought, oh man, was that a little bit early, or should I stop that, you know, a little bit, you know, later, earlier, whatever. I walk that razor's edge from thinking, yeah, I know what I'm doing. I'm also human, and I want to see what the other guys outside the cage saw. So different people have different angles. So I always go to Blake Rice. I go to Brent McKeon. I go to Jimmy, Nate. You know, I go to these guys and say, hey man, what do you see? What do you think? Because, you know, they may have a different perspective.
Indeed.
You do one of the few that does all three: timekeeping, judging, and refereeing. Which one do you love doing the most? Which do you enjoy?
Referee. 100%.
And what are
I'll sweep the cage if they ask me to. I'm not I'll do what they tell me to.
You're mopping the cage next time. You're hired.
Okay. But yeah, I prefer being in the cage.
And how far do you want to take it? I've asked each guy that. How old are you? I don't even know.
47.
Okay, so you're 47. I think you're the oldest of all the guys. I think you've also been in it the longest, so you count as the longest OG here. I know you've done the UFC and other ones, but what's your ultimate goal that you foresee you're doing, and how long are you going to stay in it?
We'll see how long the passion lasts. I mean, I'm to the point now. I mean, I've been around for I don't really know, but as long as the passion's still there, I'm gonna keep going, man. If they call me to work a LFA, a Bellator, no matter what, timekeeper, judge, ref, whatever, I'm gonna do it. If they ask me to work in the rodeo barn in South Georgia, I'm gonna do that also. I just love being in the culture.
Where are you based out of, Jeff?
Jefferson, Georgia.
Jefferson, Georgia. Is that a little north or west of the city?
It's north. I'm closer to Blake than Atlanta.
Okay, so it is also a hike for you to get to and from these shows all around the Southeast, right?
It is. Like on a Friday event, say at the old center stage, on a Friday event, it's probably 3.5 hours to get down there through traffic,
Wow.
and then an hour home.
Yeah, I hope that's the biggest thing that everybody takes away from this show, man. It's just like how much work that y'all have to put in. I know the referees, y'all are always in the cage, and we always see you, but we don't ever hear from you too often. So I hope just at the end of this that people are able to understand that, you're people too. You make sacrifices in order to make it to be a part of these events each and every week. What is your everyday hustle?
I work at Wrigley's chewing gum. I'm like a fat Willy Wonka. Word for real? Yeah.
That's why he's always got the gum and the candy cage side and the mints and stuff like that. Yes. So yeah, he's the gum and mint guy. He's now the cage cleaner that we just hired to mop the cage. He's the inspector. He's the timekeeper. He's the judge. He's a referee. And while we're talking about annoying Blake Grice, he just commented, Jeff equals dedicated to the sport, always has been, never complains, does a good job. So, not that Blake's opinions ever matter.
That's a huge compliment to me.
Yeah, what does that mean to you to hear that, other referees can say that about you, especially somebody like Blake?
Oh man, I mean, I've looked up to Blake since he was refereeing the old Georgia Mountain Center fights. I mean, I was in the crowd back then, and I thought it'd be a cool job, and I got to, hang with him on many occasions. He's a man I look up to him, and he's also, I can call him a friend. I mean, we've had some good conversations. We've got a great group of guys, and I appreciate every one of them.
Indeed. Shout out to all the refs that are still in the queue right now watching and supporting our guy Jeff Kemp here on NFC Now Pod. Y'all definitely make sure you drop a comment if you have any questions for any of these referees that we have on our show today. You've done a lot of different shows, and David has neglected to ask this question, but I'm going to ask it for him, man. What separates the NFC from a different show, and what can NFC do better in order to be a better show?
That's a good question. I haven't thought about that. Now, the one thing I love the old Wild Bills days, but they dragged it out. I mean, you would have a 10-minute intermission between each fight sometimes, but that's gotten better, and I'm glad to say that. I don't know. That's a good question.
Yeah, the problem at Wild Bills was my partner was Amy Lynn, who I'm still a friend with, the CFO. Beer sales. Every time we'd say a 3-song break meant a 33-song break.
Yes.
My goal was to have the main event in the cage by 11:30. Their goal was to have the main event in the cage by about 12:45. So completely different things. I also was at Wild Bills when I was in my early 30s, so I could stay up till 2 or 3 in the morning. Now, fuck that. I want to be done with the fight by midnight, be taken down the cage, and get home by 2, 3 a.m. if I'm lucky. And it's funny, Matt Waller just said, I've thrown punches with Jeff in the crowd in South Georgia. Solid teammate.
That was a true story. True story. We had probably 14 fights in the cage and probably about 30 out. So good night.
Was that a South Georgian, like one of those outdoor barns?
Yeah.
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 Now, Jimmy Neely, he mentioned how refs can be territorial, man. Have you experienced that level of territorialism or like politics in that referee space?
There are, but I've been received well. I mean, I went to South Carolina when Blake was away. I mean, and those guys welcomed me with no problems. I mean, you hear the horror stories, but I've never dealt with one myself.
And are referees a part of the commission?
Sure. Yeah, they if we do well, they're gonna tell us.
So y'all are like a part of the commission. The commission, what does that process look like? Because I know there's commission, and explain that for me.
Well, like Matt Woodruff, he's our executive. What's his title?
Director.
Executive director.
Executive director. Thank you. I blanked out. But yeah, he's the one that contacts us about the upcoming fights, and he's the one saying, "Do you have any conflicts?" Because most of us have trained in the past, so we don't want to referee one of your buddies. So he's to make sure that there's no conflicts before the fight begins. He may contact you after the event to say what happened, heard about a situation we can talk about, maybe good, maybe bad. Yeah, he contacts us before and after each event typically.
Indeed. Thank you for that information, because sometimes you just don't know who's who, the cage side, if they're working together, if they're friendly, if they're not, like what's going on. David?
Yeah, and I was going to say, so Matt Woodruff, for the executive director of the Athletic Commission, when he gets the calendar, he basically emails these guys, says, "Hey, are you available to work the January 20th NFC fight night?" They reply and say yes or no. He builds his referee, judges, inspectors from there. So Matt Woodruff and the Athletic Commission hires them, but it's the promotion that actually pays them. And then if there's any complaints, Matt deals with it from there. So Athletic Commission hires them, and then the promotion pays them. So
sure.
Jeff Kemp joining us here on NFC Now, man. Before we part ways today, man, what are your final thoughts? Something that you want to leave the NFC community with today?
Okay, I would encourage everyone to enter the sport as a fan, just as a casual fan, just to got into it because of watching UFC events, or if you're a coach or a trainer, a fighter, to get involved, man. Take the course, take Blake's course. You know what you're looking at. I think that's very important. And don't do this if you're not passionate about it, because you want to make yourself rich and make a name for yourself. You got to be careful. That name you make maybe not be such a good one. So, yeah, be passionate, be flexible, and be willing to learn.
You heard it here first, ladies and gentlemen. That is Jeff Kemp joining us here on NFC Now. Jeff, man, thank you for taking your time this evening, man. We hope you have a good one. Can't wait to see you at our next show.
Thank you guys for having me. Hope you guys have a Merry Christmas.
Thank you. You too, Jeff.
Every time y'all bring up Wild Bills, I'm like, damn, I wish I was like off the porch back then. I wish I knew David Oblast back in the Wild Bills days. You feel me?
You missed the heyday. Those were the crazy days. 2,000-3,000 people, drunk girls everywhere. The fights go until 1:30 in the morning. After parties. Yeah.
What's crazy? When I was younger, I would always hear and maybe even see the posters, but this was before I really became like a super fan of martial arts. So it just wasn't my time. I wasn't supposed to be a part of the NFC back then.
Nah. Generational gap. Yeah.
It is a little generational gap.
And I know he's been waiting, so we got to bring on Big Clay Bennett, our one jiu-jitsu referee, get him in. Can you hear us, Clay?
Yes, sir.
Do we call you a referee or are you a heffery? What do we
Heffery, please. Heffery. It's Portuguese. All R's are pronounced with an H.
You look Portuguese.
I get that a lot.
Ladies and gentlemen, Clay Bennett joining us here on NFC Now. What is up, Clay? Happy Monday.
How's it going, guys?
We're maintaining, man. This is our referee show. I'm not sure if you've been able to tune in and kind of hear what everybody else has been saying, man. We've had on Jimmy Neely. We've had on Jason Collins, just got through with Jeff Kemp, man. What is your relationship like with other referees?
Me and Nate, man, are best friends. We hang out every day.
For real?
No.
We're in group messages every day where we talk about everybody, but that's about it.
No, me and Nate really are friends, and we've become friends through the refereeing stuff. We knew of each other, but had never really spoke. But no, Nate's a good guy.
Yeah, so people know Clay doesn't really work with the Georgia Athletic Commission. He only deals with us on jiu-jitsu nights. Worked once with the Athletic Commission, really didn't fall in love with it. You did a boxing event, a Floyd Mayweather event. I can't remember who the main event was that night. little short guy. I'm calling someone a little short guy. Imagine that.
I was like, was it you, Dave?
It was
The knowledge
me.
of my boxing is from Mike Tyson's Punch Out. So if they weren't on there, then I don't know them.
Yeah, but it was a Mayweather show, and I remember you were there, and I think you were ringside for the main event. And correct me if I'm wrong. We have Nate up next, but I think Nate took Floyd Mayweather's daughter's seat ringside, I believe.
I don't know if that was Floyd's daughter, but she claimed to be a close relative, and Nate ejected her, and she went and got some guy who was high up in the promotion, flashed some badges, and she got her a seat ringside, and Nate got disgruntled about it, but shit happens.
It does, ladies and gentlemen. Again, Clay Bennett joining us here on NFC Now. Clay, what's your relationship like with David? Because it seems like y'all are like buddies.
This is coach and student.
We hooked up once. That was it. No. Met David through a mutual friend. We had a rocky start, actually. We weren't, believe it or not, we weren't friends to begin with, but the relationship has grown and blossomed. Now I consider him one of my best good buddies.
Yeah,
I kind of left Clay outside for 2 hours at center stage at an MMA fight. Was that the first time we ever met?
We may have I think that's the first time we'd ever exchanged words. Yeah. I'd posted, I think Devontae Sewell was doing a fight, and I was cross training with him some, or the jiu-jitsu, going down to his gym some. And I'd posted on his Facebook, said, hey, when you get tickets, let me know. I'll buy tickets from you. And David hopped on there and said, you can just PayPal me and I'll leave him at will call. I was like, all right, perfect. And he'll get the commission. Well, I went up there. It was me and 3 other people, and I asked for my tickets, and they said, oh, well, we don't have them anymore. They're gone, or we never got these. Or she had one of them. They let me in, and I went and grabbed David and said, hey, where's our tickets? And he's like, well, go ask this guy. He blew me off 2 or 3 times, and then
I think it was over an hour by accident, and it was just I got busy and flustered and by accident. Yeah.
And the bad thing is when we finally got in, I was like, well, and the place is packed out, obviously, because he's selling my will call tickets. I was like, where do you want to sit? He goes, oh, I'll just find somewhere. So we got bounced around. It was a bad experience.
I'm assuming that David doubled back to make it right.
What is your definition of making it? What would you do to make that right, Julian?
I mean, maybe slide you some tickets for the next show, scot-free.
Thank you. He thought making it right was giving me my money back for that night, and that was it. I was like, well, no shit. I missed half the fucking show because you got rid of my tickets. You should give the money back. But he didn't think he should slide me tickets for the next one, which was fine. And he got his little posse to get on there. So, yeah, David's doing the right thing. But
David, you got a posse?
I'm talking about you, Blake Wright.
I don't have a posse. I have no posse.
Oh, he's got a posse.
Jews don't have posses.
Yeah. Tell that to Kanye.
Indeed. So how did y'all actually end up how did this relationship form? And when did this happen? What year was this? And how did y'all get to this point?
My life goes on pre-pandemic, post-pandemic. So it was before the pandemic. We had a mutual friend that got us together, or I'd been after him to do some jiu-jitsu shows, and he was like, we've tried it before. It didn't work out. It was kind of boring to the MMA fans. And that's true. It doesn't really appeal.
I think we used Quentin Rosenberg the first show we ever did, and he's just a boring jiu-jitsu fighter, so that's what made it boring, I'll say.
No. You had said you'd done them. I don't know who you had or hadn't done before, but Quentin was the first one we got on. He fought at the time he was named Sean Kilgus. I think he goes by Lady Tori Bree, Foxfire or something. Lady Bree. Well, at the time he was Sean. So Sean and Quentin, now Quentin's not a boring fighter. He had a pretty, it was a quick match. He was a lot better than Lady Bree. He submitted him pretty quickly. I'm going to get canceled because of these pronouns, but anyway. But no, it wasn't bad. That was the start of it. And then Quentin and Chris Moriarty. I don't know if you know who Chris Moriarty is. He really big name in jiu-jitsu in Atlanta. Him and Quentin kind of had an online tiff, and that got escalated. So they did a match, and there's a lot of hype behind that match. That was actually an exciting match, and that kind of took it off. And finally got it to do he was saying the jiu-jitsu on an MMA card, it's not as exciting for your MMA fans. When you're watching guys getting punched in the face and then you go see guys hugging pajamas, it's not the same. So we got an all jiu-jitsu card put together, and he got me to be the referee and come up with a rule set for it, and it grown from there.
How have you been able to like kind of make it grow? My bad, Dave. I didn't mean to cut you off on that.
It's nothing I've done special. It's just the first one, it took the people in the community kind of getting accustomed to it and saying, hey, this David puts on a good show. This is something I'd be interested in. And it took off from there. We got better matchups. I don't even remember who the first main event was.
I think the first all card was Philippe Gentry versus Guy Curry, I think.
You're right. Yeah. Now that was like the Tyson Griffin, Forrest Griffin, Stephen Bonner kind of thing. They had a really good explosive match. Philippe, God, he brought a bunch of people. I just still remember the guy in the banana suit dancing around. The place went crazy for Philippe. So that really was the big icebreaker, and kind of put it on the map. And everybody's saying like, wow, I'd like to do that.
And I think a major thing is just because we're more consistent than fight to win. I think people look at fight to win as the benchmark, being on Flow Grappling. But I think here in the land in the Southeast, they tour all over the country, so they get more widespread recognition. But I don't think there's any bigger name in the Southeast than NFC Jiu-Jitsu, just because we do it more often. And with that being said, when you did come up with the rules, I guess explain to people the rule set. You win if after 2 rounds it's tied, you go to a third sudden death round. Like, where did the rule set come from? Because I remember it a little bit from 5 years ago, but not completely.
We basically ripped off this promotion that was going on in Russia called ACB, was where we got the rounds, and I thought that was going to be a good fit for the NFC because it is a predominantly MMA promotion, so it's still got the mix of the MMA. And, a lot of people enjoyed that ACB promotions rule set. And then as far as the scoring goes, that's one thing I can say about our rule sets is we evolve it. We don't just stick if something's not working or it is working, or we see something we like. We primarily took from IBJJF, but, we reward submission attempts more, and we're more aggressive with the stalling. And, I think that's been a good hybrid of that. And I actually took some rules sets or some things from the AGF promotion. Some rules they do different than the IBJJF. So I've tried to do my best to take the best of each promotion's rule set and integrate it. And I always ask for people's feedback. Like me and Doc Chris, we've had a lot of conversations on what we can do different. He was helping refereeing at the time, and any of my friends in jiu-jitsu, sometimes I'll listen to it every time, but I don't always do what they say, but I'm always listening to see what I think will make the show better.
And I was with Doc Chris at Dr. Trout's party a week or so ago, and I don't know if you've seen him lately, but he's walking with quite a bit of a limp right now. Said it doesn't affect him in jiu-jitsu or surgery, but it's gotten worse. But we're talking about jiu-jitsu, of course, and he said the one guy I really wish I could beat that I've never been able to is Clay Bennett. So it's kind of funny he said that.
He said that he's never beat me?
Yeah.
Or beat?
Yeah, he said one guy I've always wanted to beat that I can't is Clay.
Well, his memory's short because he used to beat the shit out of me when I was a blue belt and a purple belt. I think he don't remember training with me then.
Clay Bennett, what does jiu-jitsu mean to you?
Like I say, I've wrestled my whole life, or I started wrestling when I was 8 years old. And, after, you got to retire the Letterman jacket, you can only wear it around so long. And, you don't have any, you still want to compete. It was something that I could transition into. And I've always enjoyed watching the MMA fights from, the original UFCs. And so it's become a lot more as far as not just the sport, but the people, like develop relationships with David and the guys I trained with. Some of my best friends I've met through jiu-jitsu.
And many people might not know it, but you actually did fight MMA once at Cowboys. I believe you're undefeated 1-0, but we've talked about it before. You won a fight without ever throwing a punch. Is that correct?
I actually did 3 fights.
Didn't even know there's that many.
Yeah. The first one, I was pretty green. I'd been doing jiu-jitsu probably about 2 or 3 months. But I had a wrestling background, and they threw me in there. And yeah, my stand-up game is a little lacking. So there was not many punches through. I don't think I threw a punch.
We got into covering excuse me, I'm sorry. Again, Clay.
No, go ahead.
Now, we got into mixed martial arts by covering jiu-jitsu, and one thing that we found very interesting, and I believe going to that gym in Marietta, right off the corner of is that Delk Road and the Terrell Mill or something like that. There's a gym over there.
Yeah, Windy Hill, Powers Ferry corner.
Yeah. That was one of the first gyms that we ever gone to, man. One thing that we noticed just by asking everybody questions was the way in which people, no matter what color, creed, gender, talk about jiu-jitsu and how the practice, the martial arts itself has made them just be better people. And not only just on the mats, but like off the mats. And that's what I was getting at when I asked you, like, what does jiu-jitsu mean to you, man? Has it like affected you like all around?
Like I say, I'm still a dumb redneck, but they put up with me more on jiu-jitsu. It really is. It brings together a lot of different people from different walks of life, because you've got different people from race and religion, all the way from, you've got guys who are wanting to compete to win a world title, to some guys that just want to get in shape, to some people who's just never been a part of a team or anything before. And so it brings a different group of people together, and people you wouldn't integrate with in any other walk of life.
You work with David Oblas on these shows, man, as the lead matchmaker for jiu-jitsu, man. Like, what does that opportunity just even mean to you, for you to be basically a conduit to make sure that some of these guys and girls around Atlanta have a platform in order to perform?
Oh, it can be annoying sometimes, but as far as matching people up, but for the most part, it's good. I get to pick out, who I always wanted to see roll against each other. And, the easiest ones, there's some people who, they're very picky about who they'll match up with, from weight to anything. And you've got some guys, I'll fight anybody, anytime. Those are obviously the easiest ones. And those are the ones always get the best or first opportunity with me, anybody who's down to fight whoever.
And a little bit different, as we've been talking to their MMA referees tonight, they're appointed by the Georgia Athletic Commission. They're after the event, they're examined by the Georgia Athletic Commission. If they do bad, it goes in their folder or whatever. With jiu-jitsu, it's a little bit looser, that myself, you, and other people run the NFC jiu-jitsu events, and then you're the head referee and you appoint the other referees. What's been the most difficult call to make as a jiu-jitsu ref? I know it was on a NFC jiu-jitsu. You had to do a double DQ against Chris Jones and his opponent. One time you had the DQ Alex for tossing a guy on his head, but I didn't know if these have been the most difficult calls, or if an IBJJF or a new breed, what's the most difficult call you've had to make out there?
It's hard to say the most difficult call. Nothing really stands out much. The whole deal with Chris Jones and Abreu, I think I'm pronouncing his name close enough. Abreu, he's a multiple time master world champion. Chris is probably, he hasn't been able to compete in a while for health issues, but Chris is at no gi. I mean, he was good in gi. I don't think he's competed as a black belt in the gi, but in no gi, from when he was a purple belt, he's had some big wins over Sergio, Quentin. I know he did a Kakuto that Tex Johnson was a part of, and I don't know if he matched up with Tex or how it worked out, but whatever, by the criteria, he made it to the finals of that ahead of Tex. So, two top level guys in no gi for this area. And I was expecting a barn burner, and they got out there, and, they were playing cautious, and they were doing more of a stand-up wrestling game. And, we have 3 referees out there, and we are all agreeing that, and we're aggressive with our stalling calls. We hit them with stalling once, twice, 3 times. And after the 3rd time, it was like, hey guys, one more, you're going to get the DQ. And we eventually did. And that was bad. It was our main event, but we wanted to be strict on the rule set. Abreu, I believe you could slap that guy and he would just smile and say, okay, thank you. Which is really odd because he's such a badass. Chris was a little more upset with it. And he had I understand where he's coming from. I didn't necessarily agree with it, but, it was a tough position. He got revenge on me. Me and him rolled at Nogi Pans, and he kicked my ass. So, we're even, I guess.
Now, there was I believe it was the last NFC card, man, in which you match made, but you were also on the card, man. How did you go about matching your own fight?
I'm one of those people that I'm selective on who I want to roll against. I'm big on I don't want to give anybody an edge, so I'm always big on I want to roll against someone my weight, my age. I went against my first match was against Dusty McCown. Me and him rolled pretty close together when we used to train together. And then Philip Smith, medaled at the Pans at Black Belt a few years ago, and he had just beat one of my teammates. And then we got up to Jimmy. Jimmy had medaled at the Pans the year before at Black Belt. And like I say, mainly the age, the weight thing. And, some people harass me about taking some tougher matches. And I'm not big into I don't know. I hadn't competed in over a year, so I wasn't going to go look for a Josh Boland to come beat me up. But I wanted a warm-up match to go do because I'm going to do Euros next month.
Can we expect to see you continuously match your own fights?
Well, somebody's asked to roll against me, so I guess Jesse's matching up my next one.
Yeah, so I guess Kaleem Callista, and I don't know if I pronounce his name close enough, but Kaleem Callista called you out for potentially our February NFC Jiu-Jitsu event. I know he's a trainer, I think in Alabama. I really haven't even looked him up, but how good is Kaleem out there? I mean, I'm sure you know who he is.
Never heard of the guy. No. He fought against Nilsson. He lost a close match to Nilsson. I don't want to say the guy's trash because, I might go up there and slip and he'll catch me, but he's not somebody I'm really concerned about. Me and him got sideways because he was matched up to do a match with one of my good friends, Will Edmondson. And he backed out of the fight because he was upset with something to do with MMA, his guys weighing in, and his guys were totally in the wrong. They were like an hour late for a 3-hour window of weigh-in. So he got butthurt about that. And anytime somebody backs out on him, I understand injury and things are going to happen, but you back out when the other guy's been training, you're not just hurting yourself, you're hurting him in the show. So that didn't go over well with me. So me and him got in the DMs and got to bickering, and he said something about prison butt fucking me or something. And anyway, told me I was trash, and so it escalated. So here we are.
Is that fight happening?
I've offered him that match the past 2 NFCs, and one he said no. The second one said he tore a labia, and then this one coming up he's asking for.
So what it was is the Athletic Commission has a 2-hour weigh-in for window. I think we do weigh-ins from 1 to 3. They were on a Friday. He had 2 guys coming in from Alabama to fight MMA. They kept sending me their GPS, and most guys get there at 1 o'clock to weigh in and start eating and drinking. His guys were 1:30, 2, 2:30, 2:45, and we're sitting there tracking it down to midnight to the minute because the weigh-ins go from 1 to 3. If you don't show up by 3 p.m., the Athletic Commission walks out right then. And that's exactly what happened. The Athletic Commission, Matt Waller, walked out right exactly at 3 p.m., which is his job to do. And the guy showed up in the parking lot at 3:05, his 2 fighters. So it sucked for them that they were 5 minutes late, but they weren't really 5 minutes late. They were 2 hours and 5 minutes late. Luckily, I didn't get my ass beat in the parking lot. Luckily, they too were cool about it because I'm the one that had to greet them and tell them, hey, you still get your hotel, but you guys aren't going to get the fight. Unfortunately, it's off. And then their trainer, Kaleem, started messaging me saying it was the most unprofessional thing he's ever seen. He was never going to let his guys fight for NFC again. And in fact, he was going to compete the next night versus Will Edmondson on this card. And he basically took himself off the card. He said, since you guys suck so much, I'm taking myself off the card and not fighting versus Will tomorrow night. Didn't understand it had nothing to do with NFC. It had to do with your 2 fighters showed up late for the Athletic Commission. So I think that's when him and Clay went at it, and they kindly told each other to go fuck themselves. And then that's what's leading us to February, that hopefully they'll end up fighting. So
that sounds like a main event, and that also sounds like a promo behind it.
I don't know of main event caliber, but we'll see.
Now,
there's a lot better matchups out there than me and Caleb.
Look forward to seeing them, man. I think that was my next question, man. What matchups would you like to see here coming up, man? Because I know we have some very interesting characters, man, in the jiu-jitsu community that have put on shows and have headline shows, man. But I mean, what matchups would you like to see?
In the gi, my dream matchup right now would be Diego Saraiva versus Bruno Frazado. No gi for the females, I would like to see Juwani Chamberlain and Alex Enriquez. They've rolled against each other before. It's always been close. And I'd also maybe like to do a no-gi tournament because I'd like to see Quentin Rosenweg and Ryan Aiken roll against each other, but they're both 10 Planet. So the only way they said they would roll against each other is if it was a tournament format and that David pays a lot of money. So I'd like to set up like a no-gi tournament. Paul Ardelia won our last no-gi tournament. Maybe get him in there to defend that belt. So put about 8 guys out there and put a good little prize out there for that. So those are some ideas I would like for main events.
Pull back the fourth wall, man. How tough is it to make some of these fights, and what kind of politics do you have to deal with putting on some of these fights that you would like to see, and the community, quite frankly, would like to see?
I'm sorry. Say that. You kind of cut off on me. I couldn't hear you.
What obstacles do you have to face in order to put on some of these matches that you would like to see, some of the politics that you deal with behind closed doors?
The politics isn't really a huge deal. Some of the professors are more old school than others. They want everything run by them and approved. Some are just, whatever, go at it, but they don't want to see their people mismatched. The biggest obstacle a lot of times with these jiu-jitsu guys is money. These guys think that they should be paid this top dollar. And, I've broke it down for them. We've had a big disagreement with this one guy who was saying he should be making like $2,000 to show, $2,000 to win. And, he was from out of town, and I tried to explain to him, I was like, the money's not there. It's the way we do it is the fairest way. We got the fair system is you get commission on all the tickets you sell. So if you're a big show and, you're going to make a lot of money. Juwani Chamberlain, she's made probably more money in the NFC than anybody because she's got an academy, and her academy turns out for her. She always sells a lot of tickets, always has a good turnout. So that's what I tell these guys. And still some of them's like, well, I should make this for without worrying about selling tickets. And yeah, the economics aren't there for them always.
From a promotional standpoint, somebody that just stands out, that jumps off the page to me is my man Juanan Constantino. I enjoy him just like from a fan standpoint. I like him. I like his energy. I like what he brings to the mat.
Because he cooked you steak at his house when you interviewed him.
Nah, he did not. He didn't cook me steak. I ain't get.
Oh, he didn't? I thought he gave you guys a Brazilian barbecue.
Nah, you know what? His family did hang out with my daughter. They put her in the car and they let her drive around while the interview was happening. So like, shout out to the fan bam for that. But I saw that, he's training at the house. What do you think about Juanan, and what does having a figure like that in the NFC jiu-jitsu community mean for the shows?
Walden is a huge wild card. He will tell you that himself. Me and Walden's competed against each other, I think 4 times total. We've always had a close match every time we've rolled. And so me and him were kind of rivals there for a while. And we kind of had like a Rocky 3 moment where when he had left Diego's gym and was training in his garage, he had hit me up and said, hey, man, I need some people to train with. So me and my friend Dustin Waters went over there and trained with him. So we went from rivals to we were training together a couple of times. Or I think I only went over there once, but Dustin and some other guys, Dustin got some other guys, got the ball rolling on getting some guys to train with him and eventually cornering him. But Walden will tell you, he's like, man, when I compete, I'm crazy. Nicest guy you'll ever meet at his house or anything. He did cook me a steak. Wonderful host, super nice guy. But you catch him on a competition day, there's no telling what you're going to get out of him. He's called me out while he's cornering somebody.
Or a day when he's refereeing, you also never know what you might get out of him in a tournament. But I love Juan and Constantino when he gets pissed as a competitor, because on the last show when he competed, he lost, he was so mad. He left his black belt at the venue. So in my living room is his black belt on my my little Iron Sheik. I've got every color but brown right now. It's the only black belt I've ever kept after a show till he comes and gets it. But he was so pissed, he ripped up his check in front of everyone and threw it on the ground. So he still hasn't been paid. That's the number one competitor that I love that gets pissed, rips up their check, and I still haven't paid them 3 months later. So if all of you referees want to do that, get pissed and rip up your check.
I love the energy and the spirit behind it, though. You know, you can see him compete with that. You can see the way he walks in there, and like, you know, I haven't seen that many characters. I think it was Wallen, it was Logan Santos, obviously, that like stood out to me. There's just a couple of guys, like when they step onto the mats, like they bring those eyeballs. I know we talked about how, you know, jiu-jitsu isn't as entertaining to a mixed martial arts crowd, but you need figures, you need characters like Wallen in order to continue to just push NFC jiu-jitsu to the next level. That's just my opinion.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Wallen, when I was mentioning earlier of people who said I'll fight anybody, that is Wallen. He is not scared of anybody. He asks for a tough fight.
Indeed. Now, we talked about him leaving his black belt. And a question I had for you, Clay, is I've heard whispers about how there's differences in black belts. Like, you know, not everybody's black belt is created the same. Could you speak on that?
Well, it's just when they say that, there's going to be a difference between Leonardo Nogueira giving somebody a black belt that's trained with him as opposed to, I'm not going to say a name of, you know, a smaller academy. You know, like I say, and there's different ages too. You know, I'm 40 years old, and I went and trained at Atos last Thursday night, and I rolled with one of Andre Kahuna. I'm sorry, Andre, I'm killing your last name. But anyway, he just got his brown belt. But the kid's like early 20s, and I'm a 40-year-old black belt. He's a young brown belt, and, you know, it was all I could do to hang on with him. So age has a difference. You'll have guys who started later, like Kemp. He's got a guy who's an oncologist who started, I think, late 50s. So obviously that guy's not going to be as competitive as a younger person. So there's different variables that come into your black belts.
Indeed.
What is, I don't even know, and I should know, what are the qualifications for becoming a black belt? Like, is there a standard qualification, or how do you get to that point? Is it a number of years?
It's ultimately up to your professor as how fast he wants to promote you. Some people have a written standard. I'll use Kenny Kemp, for example. He keeps an attendance card. If you've made so many classes, you get a stripe. And then after you complete all your stripes, if you're displayed that, you know, you're proficient enough to get the next belt, he'll give it to you based off that. IBJJF has set a time frame for, it's like 2 years for a blue belt, a year and a half for a purple belt, that a minimum time period you have to be at that. And they've just recently waived it because you had some people, just, you know, some of these prodigies or phenoms they got their blue belt and then they won worlds. And, you know, before the time was up, they got their purple belt, you know, they're a world champion. And they were saying, well, you guys got to wait. I think that happened with Roberto Jimenez when he won worlds at brown belt and then got his black belt, but he couldn't compete for a while. And I might have the belts mixed up, but anyway, IBJJF has waived that now, where if you win a world title, then you get your you can compete.
And who is the one or two top black belts in Georgia? And I know we have a strong contingent from South Carolina. Who's the number one or two top guys there as well?
Leonardo Nogueira is your number one black belt in Georgia, any age. Your number two, as far as just technical wise and everything, is Bruno Verzato. So I would say those are your top two. And as far as out of state,
where does Diego Saraiva fall? Is Diego number 3, or is he 4 or 5? Just out of curiosity.
Diego's definitely, or Diego just come off as far as competition. It's one of those things. As far as pound for pound, Diego's definitely tops. But, you know, Diego weighs 145 pounds, or 150 pounds. He competes at feather, I think. So, you know, he might get a Doc Chris lay on him for 5 minutes and eke out a decision or something if they were to compete. I think Diego competes so much. Him and Walden have actually rolled against each other before in an IBJJF. And I mean, Walden had like probably 70 pounds on him, but won a referee's decision. But so as far as pound for pound, yes, Diego's top 3 for sure, but with the size factoring in there. But anyway, Diego's just come off, I just saw his Facebook where they tally up the points for the IBJJF tournaments you do. He got second place for Master 2. That's out of all the Master 2 black belts in the world. He won Pans. He just got second at Noki Worlds, and he got third at Master World. So Diego, as far as overall competitor, he's number 1 because he's the only one still doing it consistently.
And then what about in South Carolina? I cut you off.
To be honest with you, the only black belt that I can think of out of South Carolina, well, I mean, is Charlotte? Charlotte's North Carolina, right?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Gibson Size, the top in South Carolina. North Carolina, Lucas Lepre. He used to be the instructor of the Mann Academy in Atlanta Alliance. He's got a academy up there. That's one of your top black belt pound for pound in the world.
And then my last question was, everyone's taught to respect black belts. I mean, I trained jiu-jitsu a very short period, but I was taught, right when you go on the mat, you shake all the black belts' hands. Everything's about respecting not only a trainer, but all the black belts on the mat and whatnot. How utterly annoying is it for you to be a black belt, a very high-level black belt referee at the events, referee, and have these dipshit blue purple belts yelling at you because you might have made a mistake or you might have given this guy a point, and these blue and purple belts disagree with you when they should be, showing that respect the entire time?
I've only had that happen probably once at an IBJJF where a younger purple belt, he went ballistic. He lost a close match and he blamed it on a call I made. I don't take it too personal when anytime somebody gets upset and losing a close match in a competition, because, I've competed before. I know it's easy to lose your cool. I've lost my cool on referees before, so I don't take it personal. If you do, you're in the wrong line of work if you're taking stuff like that personal.
Indeed. Again, ladies and gentlemen, Clay Bennett joining us here on NFC Now, man. Before we part ways this evening, man, what are your final thoughts? What do you want to leave the entire NFC community with?
I don't have a good Jerry Springer final thought for you. Just hope we keep doing good shows, and we can't do it without the guys coming out and supporting it. So keep coming and supporting, and that's all I got.
Well, my final thing is, man, you're going to stop hating on the NFC podcast, man, because I be seeing that smoke you be blowing at David, man, and I'm team David all day. So if we got to do the 2-on-1, we can do that. But I be seeing the smack talk about the pod, man, and I'm the other half of this pod.
Well, me and him had a conversation about that. Any bad publicity is better than no publicity. So I try to drop a like and a comment every time y'all have something, whether it's nice or not, and bump it to the top of somebody's news feed.
You and our millions of followers.
We've made Billy Cahill a Facebook superstar lately by ragging on him. So yeah, it's all about the comments.
Hey man, thank you for your time this evening, Clay.
All right, thanks, guys.
Respect, brother. That's your boy,
former coach.
Shout out.
We didn't get a oos in there. We forgot to do all the ooses.
You can do it for him on the way out.
We're getting Nate to do an oos. Nate's an oos.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to NFC Now. We got Clay Bennett. That was I'm marking him off our list as we go to. I had to ask Clay about matching his own fights, man. That was something big for me because I remember when it happened, I was just it was a head scratcher. I was like, I wonder how other people take this. And he did say, he was like, people, they do feel a type of way about me, match. They want me to take harder fights, X, Y, and Z. But hey, I guess if you're the matchmaker, you make whatever fight you want to make.
Yeah, and I think that's become extremely uncomfortable for him to be the matchmaker, to be the head referee, obviously not on his fight. You can't ref and compete at the same time, but to be the matchmaker, be the head referee, and to get yourself a fight. If you're a top level black belt here, you enjoy competing. He's at all the tournaments competing. There's no one else that's going to match his fight but him. So I know it's awkward for him to message these guys and go, hey, I'm Clay Bennett. Do you want to compete versus me on NFC Jiu-Jitsu? So sometimes I'll hit them up. Sometimes we ask Jesse to hit them up. So it is definitely an awkward situation. But the good thing is now people do want to compete against him. You know, Kaleem Kalista is calling him out for February. You know, I hate to drop his name, but I'll say it. Rory Singer from Athens messaged me about competing against Clay. So hopefully that's a match that happens within the next year here in Atlanta. Look forward to it. I think it'll be a hell of a match and get a lot of publicity out there. I don't know who wins, but it's definitely one that would get some publicity. So
why do you hate to drop his name?
Because I don't want him to get mad for you know, saying it's a potential matchup, but the fact is that it is a potential matchup. It's a good matchup. I know Rory Singer has taken time off. You know, but yeah, hopefully he comes back. I think that's a good matchup, and hopefully it happens.
I personally think just with Clay's position in the NFC, man, that's a match that people will want to come out, especially if people are calling him out. I feel like people, if you were just a neutral fan of the NFC and you knew that Clay Bennett had dealings with, you know, matching, and people are now calling him out, people will want to see what's going to happen during that. I feel like people would get up for that match. Like that would be something that the community can get around and see what's up, and it can get people to talk. Yeah. And I mean, you're in the business of getting people to talk, right?
I mean, Kaleem Kalista told him to go F himself and then called him out. So, yeah, we'll see if Kaleem shows up. We've offered the fight to Kaleem. I think, like he said, his labia or his shoulder or something like that, I don't know, was torn. I have no idea if he got surgery, but he just hit Jesse up last week and said, I'd like to compete versus Clay. So hopefully that happens in February, hopefully. So,
yeah, you know, I'm interested to see what that does, man, because, you know, I feel like NFC JJ has definitely grown on me, man, and I could see there's definitely a market for that, and there's a community of people that really love jiu-jitsu and that just come out strictly for those jiu-jitsu shows. So shout out to what the NFC is doing. Shout out to Clay Bennett for joining us here on NFC Now, and shout outs to David Oblas, you know, for you know, just being the CEO, the head man in charge, you know, the man with the plan.
And a guy I competed against verse once on a Sunday at Kenny Kim is Nate Mann. Let's go ahead and bring Big Nate in. Nate, you went against me once. I pulled out the tickle finger. I think you still won.
Yeah, I definitely still won. You're right.
Well,
but let me check my bank to make sure my appearance fee showed up real quick before I go any further.
Northside Nate joining us here on NFC Now. What's up, Nate? Happy Monday.
Yeah, you too, man. You too.
How much is the appearance fee?
It's not much.
Okay. I just wanted to thank you for your help at boxing a couple weeks ago with the ring corners. So this is my thank you to you. You discovering the blue and red corners. I got you on the podcast to thank you for that and talk about what you see and how you help us out so much.
Yeah.
So,
I think
we talked about earlier. I don't know if you listened to the whole show, but the first thing we talked about, the first guest, Jimmy Neely, was talking about how you judge fights. And I told him one time there was a trainer at Octopus that you and I were there together, and the trainer was arguing with us about he felt he got robbed in a fight. It was a Muay Thai or a kickboxing fight. And I said to him, have you ever talked to Nate or Blake about how you score a fight? And he said, no, it's the same. He either said it's the same as MMA, or he said it goes like IKF, the number of kicks you land and this and that. And I told him, no, it's not. And I think I brought you in from the other room, and I said, Nate, would you talk to this guy? And I remember you sat him down and you told him this is how we score the fight. So if you wouldn't mind, you know, tell people that how you score MMA and how you score kickboxing, they're different or similar.
Yeah, so MMA, the number one criteria really is damage, okay? And, you know, if you look on the unified rules, the ABC rules, the number one thing we look for in judges is damage, how much damage is inflicted. If I hit you with 5 jabs and you land a really hard right, it kind of wobbles me a little bit, makes me step back. In that case, you would be ahead on the card. You know what I mean? So it's really all about damage first, then efficiency, right? So it's effectiveness and then efficiency is judged second.
What does efficiency mean? I mean, effectiveness is who beat the shit out of who in that round.
Yeah, effectiveness is the power of the punches. How hard are you getting hit? How hard are you getting kicked? Efficiency is how many times are you getting hit? How many times are you getting kicked? So efficiency is judged behind effectiveness.
And then what's the third?
The third is, it depends on where the fight takes place, whether it's standing or on the ground. So obviously if it's on the ground, you're going to weigh jiu-jitsu, right? So more than half of the round, the majority of the round, right? So it's a 5-minute fight. 3 minutes of the fight is judged on the ground, and you're going to judge what happened on the ground, right? Unless there was, somebody got dropped or something amazing happened. But for the most part, it's pretty easy to judge a fight. And really, the key is judging it minute by minute. If you can judge a fight minute by minute, you should be able to tell who won that fight.
And that's for MMA and we'll call kickboxing and Muay Thai the same thing for arguments. Is kickboxing and Muay Thai different than MMA?
Yeah, absolutely. So damage is still going to be the ultimate criteria no matter what, right? That's why you get a 10-8, 10-7 for knockdown. So obviously if you knock your opponent down in a Muay Thai fight, it changes the scorecards automatically. It's 10-8, 10-7. But, in Muay Thai and kickboxing, you do judge, you should judge kicks heavier, right? Because it is a kicking sport, as well as you can count defense, whereas you can't count defense in MMA. There's no reward for defense in MMA. Your reward is not getting knocked out or submitted. So at least you can judge effective blocking and effective defense in Muay Thai and kickboxing.
So I think I've heard someone else explain that before in kickboxing. If I'm fighting you and I'm kicking you a lot of times, that expends more energy.
Be able to kick me, but
let's make believe I could actually lift my head up to 6 feet, my foot up to 6 feet high. If I'm trying to land numerous kicks to your head and you're just blocking all of them, basically I'm just wasting my time and wasting my energy, and you're actually getting a positive effect out of that from the judge's standpoint.
Yes and no. If I'm just going like this and blocking kicks that are potentially hurting my arm, it really adds to the defense of how am I defending it? Am I catching the kick? Am I doing proper defenses? So, I mean, that does matter in Muay Thai and kickboxing, whereas it does not in MMA. You get absolutely nothing in MMA.
Interesting. Again, ladies and gentlemen, Northside Nate Mann joining us here on NFC Now. I was doing some digging on Facebook, man, saw a picture of David Oblas and Nate Mann on a couch together in 2013. How far does this friendship go?
Hold on, which couch? Because we never did a dirty movie, so I don't know what couch.
Yeah, well, yeah. As I was saying that, I was like, yo, I probably need to explain what they was doing. It looked like a couple guys watching the UFC fight. Y'all wasn't doing no funny business.
That was
a Black Plague on that one.
Yeah, that was James Thorpe and Tom Wynn and Non Wynn. So I trained with those guys way back in the day. Probably I started training with them in 2002. Maybe James Thorpe, the Black Plague, was a undefeated MMA fighter. He used to kick the hell out of me. He had a UFC party at his house back in 2012, and we ended up there. And so yeah, I've known David for a little while. He drugged me out with Kyle Maynard to Alabama. That was the worst experience of my life. Still traumatized.
Me too. So. And we were talking earlier about how you go from starting out to being a referee. We talked to Jason Collins about that, Jimmy Neely, Jeff Kemp. What was your experience from starting out in MMA, who you started out for, to now being Northside Nate Mann?
So I started out training with MMA. I started training with a guy named, Ken Coffey. He was a judge for a while, James Thorpe. Just fell in love with MMA, so I wanted to be involved in it. I helped Ken promote shows outside of Atlanta for a little while called Extreme Freestyle Fighting. So I did a little bit of promoting back in the day. When that failed, I inherited a bunch of gloves because we had absolutely nothing to do with them. So then I started renting them out. Ken gave me the gloves as a payment because obviously I didn't make a lot of money promoting. So I started renting those gloves out. So I started out as the glove guy, just handing out gloves at fights, getting licenses. And then I went to inspector. I think I was an inspector for 4 or 5 years. I started judging, and then Matt Woodruff and Blake Grice gave me a chance to be a referee, and I jumped on the occasion and did pretty well at it. So
what year was this?
Probably 10, 12 years ago. I mean, it's been a while.
Yeah, man. So you've been doing this for 10, 12 years. I've seen you at every NFC event, man. Like Northside Nate is associated with NFC in my head. What does I asked you about you and David's friendship earlier, but what does you and David's friendship and the NFC mean to you?
I'm not friends with David right now.
I agree.
He's kind of a jerk, man. So I can't really be friends with Obosh right now. He's a habitual line stepper. So if you know anything about David, he is definitely a habitual line stepper, and it's just hard to be his friend.
How about the NFC, or is the NFC too associated with Dave for us to say anything nice about the NFC?
It's pretty hard. It's pretty tough to say anything about the NFC, but I will say that they're consistent and they do give you a platform to work on. I mean, without the NFC, it would be hard for me to be able to ref, and to be able to do what I enjoy, because they are so consistent in Atlanta, and they are one of the top promotions in the Southeast. So they do give a consistent platform to people to get better on.
Did I ever rent gloves from you when you were renting them? I don't remember back then if I did or not.
Yeah, you did.
Okay. And then I mentioned earlier, I think when Jeff Kemper's on, because he's still a timekeeper, judge, and ref. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think you're the only one that refs MMA, kickboxing, and Muay Thai, NFC Jiu-Jitsu, and boxing. I don't think any of these other guys cross over to boxing.
Yeah, so I'm currently I do professional boxing in Georgia. I do IBJJF jiu-jitsu tournaments all around the U.S. I go to Texas. I go to Tennessee. I've gone to Vegas to do Master Worlds for the IBJJF jiu-jitsu tournaments, and then obviously MMA.
Jason Collins brought up earlier the diminished spirit aspect of what you're seeing when you're in there, and you are the third person in the cage. Decisions happen quick. You're having to make decisions that are that people they may criticize because it's just in the moment, man. What does that feel like when you're there, and what does the diminished spirit look like exactly?
So if you play Tekken or Street Fighter, the little bar that goes consistently down as you're getting your ass kicked, right? I mean, your guy gets slower. It's harder for him to throw punches. It's harder for him to defend. I mean, it's kind of like that. You can just see it in people's eyes. And you can see when they want a way out. Obviously they're overwhelmed, but I mean, they're tired. They can't keep their hands up. They're taking too much punishment. They're slower. You could tell in their walk, the way they react to if the fighter backs away, how they react to that fight. Then you know what I mean. So there's a lot of things that I look for: the way they walk, the way they're stepping, the way they look. I'm big on going to the corners in between rounds because I want to see how they're talking to their coach, how they're reacting to their coach, and what they're saying. That's a big indication that tells me if they're diminished, or you know what I mean. So I need to keep a closer eye if they're having a hard time keeping that discussion with their coach.
What are you looking to hear when you do go into the corner? Because I actually do appreciate you going in and just kind of just checking the temperature in certain corners.
Just the same thing we're doing now, coherent, question response. Like if they're saying something, how they're responding to their coach, how they look, are they slumped over in their chair? Because there was somebody that died in a kickboxing fight one time because they just weren't paying attention. So that's a big indication of when somebody's in the corner, their heartbeat can come down for a second. How are they reacting then? How do they look?
A lot of times in MMA, it seems like people are too prideful to throw that white flag in the cage, man. What are your thoughts on it? Do you hope to see more people do that, or are you okay with it?
Man, to be honest with you, if it reaches that point, I don't think I've done my job as a referee. If the corner kind of has to throw the towel, like I get there's certain circumstances, they know their fighter better than I do. But at the end of the day, man, like it's my job as a ref to make sure these fighters go home safe. They can fight next week if they want to. They don't take a career-ending injury or brain trauma at a local show where they're just kind of getting their feet wet.
I've got a dumb question because I don't know all the rules. Can a corner stop a fight in an MMA fight? Like in boxing, you see them physically throw the white towel into the ring at the referee. Can the corner stop the fight in an MMA fight, and how do they make you realize they are?
So absolutely, the corner can stop the fight whenever they would like to. What they would need to do is just get their towel, stand up on the apron, and just wave the towel. They have inspectors that sit right by them that can get our attention. Our chief officials do a great job of looking at what's going on ringside. So I mean, obviously we would see it. So yeah, they definitely can stop the fight.
Has there been a time where you felt like you took a little too long to stop a fight or stop the fight a little prematurely?
It's tough to say, man. I'm a habitual overanalyzer. So I ref these fights. I go back and see what mistakes I made. If I made mistakes, I habitually analyze these fights and overthink them. But it's tough to really pinpoint. But I mean, obviously, I've gone and be like, man, like after you stop it, you're like, he kind of jumped up quick, or he's reacting a little different than I thought. So I mean, there's always in that mind where I think about things and analyze how to do better. You know what I mean?
You're one of the few that I've ever seen like actually like go out and like defend yourself. Like, hey, like, I know this was in question, but let me just go ahead and present the facts on this one.
Yeah.
Why do you feel the need to do that?
A lot of times I feel like people just might have their own idea of things, or if I can look at the rules and try to educate people, or just say, hey, based on these rules, these are why I reacted, then I think that's okay for me to do at times. It's not okay for me to do my opinion on things. But if I could say, hey, according to these ABC rules or according to the Georgia State rules, this is what happened, and try to educate people, because believe it or not, I don't like to be hated. I mean, I get a lot of hate sometimes because I do a thing where there's a lot of ego, there's a lot of pride in MMA. I mean, that's a tough thing to do for people to get in the cage and put everything on the line in a fist fight. You know what I mean? And for me to stop that fight, that's a lot of pressure on me. So if I can say, hey, this is why I did it according to these rules, I'm more than happy to do that. And if they, they could either choose to say, oh, okay, or say, man, like F Nate, either way, I try to do things based on the rule.
First, I'll say F Nate, but then I will throw a question up that someone else asked that I was thinking about. How do you feel about the ending of the Lewis Brewington fight? And I was going to ask about that earlier because that was one of the most
was too. That was we was working to that one. We was working to that one, Nate. We was working.
So tell us what you saw from your eyes, because we've seen it 1,000 times in video.
He's a very animated character, and I know he was hyped up for the fight, and there was a lot going on in the fight, pre-fight and in the fight. But I mean, it is what it is. Like they got a little bit out of hand. I kind of took him down, and he said, all right, Nate, all right, I'm cool. And then that was it. So, I mean, he's just an animated character, and, it just is what it is at that point.
From my perspective, he is a very animated character. And I think, again, as I've told David, as I told him, this is good for the NFC. We need animated characters, man. It seemed like in that moment, he stood over him. There was a lot of conversation because I did an interview with him following, and there was a lot of conversation about him standing over him and basically essentially shooting, like putting one in his head. Do you feel like in that moment you could have stepped in earlier? Or like, what is that line when it comes to you in celebration of the other fighters? Because I've seen there was another fight where like a fighter, like I think maybe like flicked the guy off after something happened, and like you pushed him off, and it was an aggressive thing. What's that line for you in like judging sportsmanship versus just stopping a fight?
So I'm a very old school guy. I mean, I used to watch Tito Ortiz literally like be in the middle of the ring and fake drag his opponent out and dig a grave in the middle of the ring and put his opponent in it. So, I mean, like I'm very old school when it comes to MMA and things like that. So, I mean, like I said, MMA, it takes a lot of guts and just, it takes a lot to get in that ring and get in a fist fight with somebody. So if you want to do a little celebration for a couple seconds after you win a fist fight with another grown man trying to kill you, like, so be it. A lot of training goes into that. I mean, these guys train for months and months. Like, if they want to do a little celebration, where I didn't think that was anything that bad, because he's done it in previous fights, people didn't get upset. But there was just a lot of heat on that fight. So
the aftermath was crazy. That was one of the best moments in my short NFC career, man. Just like being witness to you intervene in the second time around, man. Like, have you ever been a part of that type of fiasco at the end of a fight?
Not in the ring. There's been a few fights out of the ring, like Waller said. I think Matthew Waller got punched in the face that night by one of Wesley's people. And I mean, there's obviously been fights in the crowd that we've had to break up, especially at some boxing fights. But some fights get good like that, and I mean, that's what sells and builds up MMA as a whole. Like people still talk about that to this day. So I mean, sometimes that's needed.
Absolutely. Again, ladies and gentlemen, Northside Nate Mann joining us here on NFC Now. Northside Nate, I will say you are to me the Herb Dean of the NFC, man. Like, you're always there. You're at all events, and it's just consistently you. Like you're your own character, Northside Nate Mann. Like, you can't miss you. And so, on behalf of the entire NFC community, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think so, man. It's a team that makes it work. I mean, I've just been very fortunate in learning from good people. I learned a lot from Blake. I learned a lot from Jeff. I always try to learn, but I wouldn't say I'm any character. I'm just there to do a job, and I really enjoy refereeing. I want to be at every show. I want to referee. I really love it, but I don't think I'm a character by any means. It takes the whole team,
Hold on. So Waller just chimed in and said, wait, did you just say sometimes it's needed that I get punched?
No, not at all. Not at all. I'm saying sometimes that
Waller.
excitement in the fight is what's needed to sell future fights. That excitement in the fights, is what builds fighters up sometimes. Absolutely, Waller does not need to be punched, but he did get punched a couple times that night.
I think Nate needs to be punched a few times at fights, but I'll say even with the Lewis Burrington, from my aspect, what happened afterwards, when he did the standing gun over the head. So people don't know after that. I think we got him out of the cage. Well, he was celebrating the first row or two on top of the chair. That's when Dr. Traub was taking care of his opponent Wesley in the cage. I knew there was a pretty bad knee injury by the way Dr. Traub was handling it. And Luis tried to go back into the cage to, be interviewed and receive his winning medal. And that's when I told Lewis, and I brought security over, and I said, Lewis is not going back in that cage after that fight. Wesley's still laying on the ground. He's got to find a way to get out of the cage. You had two different fan bases there, Louis and Wesley's, and based on words that were said or not said the night before at weigh-ins, I knew it was going to spill over in some way, shape, or form to the crowd. So I told security to take Lewis upstairs. He's not coming back in the cage. I messaged him later. He didn't get paid that night. He didn't get his medal that night. I met him for lunch the next week, and we talked, and I gave him his money. I gave him his winning medal. I explained to him why I didn't allow him back in, because my number one concern was that Wesley would get out of there. Wesley would get in the ambulance, or his family would drive in the hospital. And I didn't think that was going to happen with Lewis in the cage that night. And then I told Lewis what I thought he did standing over him with the guns was excessive and not what we're looking for. He explained to me and showed me videos from the past, just like you said, Nate, where he has done that to past opponents. He'll go to his side of the wall and he'll shoot his gun over to them. And that's his way of being like Tito Ortiz, saying, I shot you, I killed you, this fight's over, you're done with, I finished you. Doing it from opposite sides of the cage is different than standing right over the man doing it. That's two completely different things, in my opinion. But he also showed me he had it ready on his phone to show me other UFC fights. I remember he showed me one guy that just butt humped the other guy at the end of the fight. He choked him out or whatever. He got behind him and he was butt humping him. And he's like, how is what I did worse than that? And I had no defense to say it's not worse, but you stand over a guy and you put bullets in his head. It's not going to end peacefully. It's just not going to. So.
It was a moment in NFC history, and I think we just have to appreciate it for what it was. We hope that, we want to curb enthusiasm, but we want to get rid of it. Is that fair? Because I agree.
Like Nate said, these guys have personalities. There's the one time to shine, and we need to give them every opportunity in the world and shine. But we also have to think of the other guy that might have been, that came in second place, and make sure that second place guy can get out of there peacefully and safely. So
They
that's
were
a number one
joking.
concern
They were
as well.
joking that my man caught 2 L's that night.
Let's keep it honest though. Like it takes a different kind of person to want to get in the cage and get in a fist fight with another grown adult. Like those are gonna be characters, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Not
I
everybody
don't
wants to
disagree.
do that.
I did it versus Jamonte, right?
That's not really a fight. You did it.
That was 2 grown men fighting on a jiu-jitsu mat for the pleasure of 1,000 people watching.
That was one grown man and another guy who didn't really know jiu-jitsu, but hey.
Which one was I? Was I the grown man or the one that didn't know the jiu-jitsu?
A little bit of both.
Yeah, I was gonna say that categorizes both of us there.
Yeah, a little bit of both.
And Julian's camera is out because his thing overheats. He can still hear us.
I'm right
he'll
here.
click on in a second. Yeah, he can hear us and see us.
I mean, I'm the last guy on when everybody's asleep, so yeah, his computer is probably a little hot.
Which do you enjoy? Enjoy more, referee and jiu-jitsu, MMA, Muay Thai, or now pro boxing?
I love MMA. It's always been my passion. Like I said, I started training around 2000. I've been at some of the very first MMA shows in Georgia when they were in the back of a Mexican restaurant on Jimmy Carter Boulevard in a wooden ring. I'll always love MMA as my top passion. I mean, that's the thing I love the most, and that'll always be my first choice.
And we talked about Blake Grice's ABC class earlier, how you guys are required to take his class every 2 years, or an equal class, Big John McCarthy, whoever else teaches them. I've suggested the head trainer of every gym must also take those classes. That way they know what you guys are looking for as a referee, looking for as a judge, and they know how to translate that down to their students. What are your thoughts? Should trainers be required to take a class?
I mean, I wouldn't say they should be required, but they absolutely should take a class. I think there was a couple trainers at the last one that has definitely helped them as a coach and be able to coach their MMA fighters. And Blake Grice does an excellent class. I mean, I've taken John McCarthy's class before. I've taken a Gerald class before, which he's John McCarthy's top guy. I've taken one of his classes before, and Blake's right up there with anybody, if not has a better class. He spends more time. It's very informational. I think anybody that's involved with MMA should take that course just for the knowledge of knowing what everyone looks for, what's legal, what's illegal. And I think it definitely would help them be better coaches in the long run. Yes.
Taking classes like that, is that a good opportunity for you to continue to like meet and bond with other referees?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's not really a lot of time to bond because, I mean, it's such intense information and a short amount of time. But really at the shows, you kind of bond with referees, you talk to them, you get to know them. Mostly at that shows, people are just there to learn and kind of, go about their day. But
Jimmy Neely mentioned earlier that refs are territorial, man. Have you seen that in your time?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, maybe when I was coming up, I might have been a little bit too. I mean, it's something that you work hard towards. Like, I was a judge for many years. I was a inspector for many years. Like, you kind of put your time in. So it is hard to see somebody come and try to kind of push you off the pedestal, so to say. Like, that is a kind of a hard thing to swallow sometimes. So I can see how that definitely leads into it with the amount of years and dedication that people put into trying to get to that position.
I appreciate your honesty on that answer, man. Now just speaking more about accountability and how we can make judging and refereeing better. Are you a proponent of open scoring?
That's a tough call. I mean, it goes both ways. The fighter that's up could get off the gas pedal and it could be a boring fight. It's a tough call. But I mean, ultimately, I like the way it is now.
That's the old school fighter in you?
Yeah, just not knowing,
Did you watch this Patty the Batty fight this past weekend?
I did not.
Okay, I was going to ask you how you scored that because, Jared Gooden did go to the corner and ask what the scores were, and it just immediately when he asked, immediately thought like it would be cool if there was open scoring so people could see what's going on, because I think in his head he thought he was winning the fight, and so I guess he just went for control that round. So I could see what you're saying too. If fighters do know, they're gonna fight differently.
Yeah, and with that fight and all the controversial fights that people say, oh, so and so got robbed. You got to go back and look at the rules, and then maybe rewatch that fight, looking at the rules. You know what I mean? Effectiveness, efficiency, damage, duration, domination. So like go look at the rules, and then maybe rewatch the fight and judge it minute by minute, instead of like a lot of people sit at home. I might be answering some text, So it's hard to really sit there and judge the fight like the judges that are sitting there ringside.
I thought we should do some kind of potentially a podcast or whatever during a UFC fight. Kind of like when you watch Monday Night Football, you see Peyton Manning and Eli Manning on the ESPN sub channel, and they're talking and making jokes throughout the whole game and how they'd coach it and what they do different or whatnot. I've always thought if we did some kind of UFC pay-per-view party that we did as a podcast and had a referee or a judge scoring each round and telling you what they see, it might help educate people. And I think people would actually watch us.
So I actually did a little bit of training with all the judges during. It wasn't really training, but basically we got together in a Zoom call. We watched close fights that were close. We talked about it. We talked about it with the criteria. We talked about it with the rules, and we kind of discussed how each person judged that fight in order to get clarity on the rules and clarity on judging. But those weren't very well attended. People were invited and they didn't show up. So,
and I'm even talking more so fans, not like the current officials. I'm talking about if we did it and fans could watch yourself or Blake or whoever it might be. I think fans might find that entertaining to say, I didn't even know you score it that round. If we just looked at that round by itself, what fans would think of that.
Well, we tried to do it with officials. I think we invited a couple fighters and coaches, and nobody really showed up except for the officials. So.
Well, even with the people that did show up and did participate in that, man, did y'all have like a similar idea about the way that y'all looked at the fight, or is this just like people just look at fights differently and score them differently in their head?
No, so we pull the rules up. Everything's based on the rules, how the judging rules should apply, and we talk about the fights with that scope. People are going to see things different. You're going to see damage different than what I might see damage. But, we try to have some consistency in the judging. I think most judges train jiu-jitsu right now, so they know what they're doing. It's not just, just people you pluck off the street. They've trained. So I think in Georgia, people might not agree with some decisions, but you got really solid officials in the state of Georgia.
As the announcer, do you think it would be beneficial for us to be able to just relay to the audience the rules?
I think during that time, man, people are drinking. They don't want to hear it. I think it would be a tough sell.
Yeah, because I'm just thinking like, if everybody did have an understanding of the rules, we might be able to come to a better understanding of how we're scoring or judging a fight. I think that's what I'm getting at.
Maybe Nate can correct me, but I think in MMA, if we did that, the rule set is 25 pages long. In jiu-jitsu, I contained it to a one-page PDF. At one point in time, I think I put the rule set on the program, like the back of the program everyone gets at the front door. It turns out when people get shit-faced, they don't know how to read very well. So even the PDF of the rules are right in front of them. After they've had 8 Bud Lights, they don't know how to read and they're not paying attention.
Would it just be fair if we just say, hey,
they don't listen very well either.
These fights are judged on damage, duration, and what was the other D?
They ain't gonna listen to you.
But just even if we just kept it at those 3, does that kind of like give people a fair idea about how we're looking at a fight? Give us like a good basis, like a baseline of like what we're looking at.
I don't think so.
Fascinating.
But judging's not easy. There's close fights, and it's not an easy gig sometimes.
Definitely not.
We asked the other guys, how far do you want to go? How far do you want to go as a referee or judge? What is your ultimate?
Obviously, everybody tells you they want to ref in the UFC, but that's a very small community. I'm honestly happy reffing in Georgia. I get to do some big shows here, and I'm very grateful for that. I've done.
You're welcome.
I've done ESPN boxing. I've done Bellators. I've done LFAs. I've done PFLs.
NFCs.
yeah, you know, I've done a couple NFCs, which, you know, I mean, that's cool and all, but you know, like I've done a lot, and I'm happy where I am, and I enjoy reffing here in Georgia. You know.
Indeed, and we enjoy always having you, man.
And then what is your full-time gig out there? Everyone else told us what they do for a living.
So I'm kind of a nerd. I'm the senior business operations and strategic manager for the College of Engineering at Kennesaw State. So I kind of have like a nerdy job a little bit. So, you know, it's nice to break out and ref some MMA fights.
And I don't want to deny showing his message. Lady Bree commented both on YouTube and here. Said, I commented on YouTube, but I was not the first match for Quentin. Elmore filled in the first time. Also, Clay's a bitch. I challenged him to a match at least 3 times, and he denied it every time. If you're watching Lady Bree, I don't even know. And I'm not being rude when I ask you, but what are we calling you these days? I really don't know because I see Brianna Morningstar here, and you commented on another one, Lady Bree MMA fighter. So if you wouldn't mind commenting again, I haven't talked to you in a while, and let us know like what you are being called these days. And I don't mean that in a rude way. I mean that in a way I'm actually asking you. And are you ever going to fight again? I don't know if you're going to return and fight. I know you fought in Tennessee. You had a gig with us for the NFC, got injured. And then I think did he fight in Tennessee before or after that? I don't even know, Nate.
I don't remember.
I don't remember. So he said it's, let me show this. Hey, David, it's Brianna or Bree. Okay, I didn't know that. So I guess it's Brianna or Bree. So now we know.
Shout out to
Lady Bree, you're going to fight again
for tapping in again. I think that's good for the NFC that we have just different characters and different people that are willing to call out other people and just continue to keep that dialogue going. Just like
I think we bring Bree on a future show. He just said no, I'm retired, but I think we get Bree on the next podcast. So Bree, let us know if you want to come on next Monday at 7. Love to talk to you and see what you're doing these days. And a lot of people don't know you are an OG in MMA and jiu-jitsu. You've been around a hell of a long time, owned your own gym. So yeah, I think people find that entertaining.
Indeed. Northside Nate, man, before we part ways today, what do you want to leave us in the NFC community?
Man, you know, just thanks for letting me be a part of everybody's journey. You know, I've seen people make it to the biggest stages, and I've seen them when they started out. So it's just great to see it, great to be a part of, and I appreciate, you know, everybody allowing me to do it, all the way from the commission to the fighters.
My last follow-up to that, do you have a favorite fighter that you've seen grow? And they could be retired if you just want to be fair, you know.
Clay Bennett. Clay Bennett's my favorite MMA fighter.
Shout out to Clay. Shout out to Lady Bree. Shout out to Northside Nate. Thank you for joining us here on NFC Now, brother.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Os. I forgot to say that with all the guests. Os. And just to show Bree's last comment, Brianna said, what really, you guys clowned on me and dropped the ball on my fight. You don't want me on your show. Well, I mean, we clowned on you, but you clowned on us. And you also, after you pulled out of the fight with an injury, you did make the 20-minute video on your back porch sipping a orange juice and vodka or whatever. So you kind of brought that upon yourself. I love you, but you kind of did bring that upon yourself. You got injured. You made a 20-minute video. You were drinking, and then supposedly you trained a day or two later. So yes, we made jokes, but it's not completely on us.
Can we just have Lady Bree on right now?
Sure, Lady Bree. If no, we can't. It's Bree now. It's Bree or Brianna.
Can we just have Brianna on right now?
Yeah. While we do the close up, if Bree wants to tap in, well, shit, I'd have to bring the. Let's have Bree on next week because we'd have to give them the
link and everything. I was about to say instead of talk about it right now, like I see y'all are going back and forth. It's just like, you know, we got all our guests out the way on NFC Now today. This is I feel like this is breaking news. This is something that just happened. I'm just gonna put it out there. If it don't happen tonight, it's all good. But if it do, I'm with it.
He said schedule me next week. And he said it's also Lady Bree too. So we can call you Lady Bree, Bree, or Brianna. Hey.
Respectfully as well. I just want to be clear. I saw there was you guys was clowning. Julian Virgin, neutral. Okay. I'm in the center. Lady Bree, very kind to me. And Jenna Lee, when we pulled up on Team Octopus, you were very kind to our daughter. It's all love. It seems like there's a little bit of static here. We just want to get it out so the NFC community can see it all right here. Because look, we one big family. Families fight. You know, we have a little static over here, a little static over there. But at the end of the day, we one big community.
I like that term, static. You don't use a term like arguing or talking shit. It's static.
It's just a little static, a little friction,
Static.
just a little friction. Yeah. Yo, amazing show today.
It's the first time people have said our show is educational, so that was cool to hear.
That was a great compliment. That was a great compliment. Yeah. I'm glad that we had our refs on. Shout out to Jason Collins. I still see you in the queue. Shout out to Jimmy Neely, still out here. Shout out to Northside Nate Mann, Jeff Kemp, and Clay Bennett for joining us today. Shout out to all the viewers, our millions of viewers, as Clay likes to say. Yeah. Before we part ways, there's something that I wrote down on my list today that I wanted to talk about. Our NFC's awards banquet. Can we get an update? What's it looking like coming up?
Yeah, so we're definitely going to do it. I think I posted this will be the 14th or 15th year. I can't remember. I think 15th year. Looks like we're going to do it in February. That's usually about when we do it because we got to let the other guys finish up the December fights. NFC does not have a show in December, but there might be other shows going on either in Georgia in December or guys that live in Georgia that are fighting elsewhere. I don't know everyone's calendar. So we're open up for the nominations, hopefully this week or next week. We'll leave that open for about 2 weeks for everyone to nominate everyone in the world. So any fight in Georgia you saw that we can't think of, myself, Jesse Wable, for Jiu-Jitsu, Clay and Nate, and then other people we kind of wrap our heads around, everyone that fought and anyone that could be nominated for an award. But we like to ask the public to chime in for about 2 weeks. And then we'll put that to the voting process. I think we're going to change a little bit up. When we first started this years ago, we had a critics' choice, which was, the kind of the how do you call it? The people we depend on to be honest, kind of a quiet panel. They don't see each other's voting, but we ask them to vote on every category. That's the critics' choice. And then we used to do a fans' choice, which would be people sharing all over Facebook. You vote on Facebook and Instagram. You go to the website. So we'd have 2 different criteria. In the last few years, we only changed the critics' choice, first place and second place. So I think we're going to change it back to the fans' choice. I think that was something we missed the last couple of years. People complained it was like a popularity contest, which it absolutely is. I talked to my buddy Michael Kelly about that today. It kind of absolutely is a fan's choice. If you're Conor McGregor, he's going to spend a lot more money developing his IG and pushing it out there and getting the fans he does. So those guys might get more fans' choice votes out there, but that's the way it should be. So we're going to do the critics' choice first place and the fans' choice first place. We're going to change it up that way, and I think it'll be more fun.
How many people are part of this this critics crew? That
we've got about 15 for MMA and probably about 10 for jiu-jitsu, I'd say.
Okay.
Kind of a tight-knit group for both, and we're going to ask you your opinion as well because you've been there cage side for a lot of fights. Yourself, Kimberly, other people we trust out there to look at these fights and say a DK Brewer is obviously the submission of the year. There's really no doubt about that out there. Who was the knockout of the year? Go through that category and see who we think out there.
Absolutely. I definitely look forward to that. And I hope that maybe next week we can have a larger discussion on whether or not fighters or just recipients of awards should pay for their award or should they just have a simple paper plaque in the back? Like, something simple. I think that'll be a very fascinating dialogue to get into because I know last year that was a big point of contention on whether or not you should be paying for the plaques that you're giving out or should the people be paying for the plaques. So
it was a conversation between me and my BFF Reese Watkins. We went back and forth a little bit on that last year. So shout out. I welcome different opinions. Let's talk about that next week. I welcome different opinions, and I've even wanted to make a different category, a more fun category like best dressed fighter or best looking fighter. For MMA and jiu-jitsu, who's the most beautiful fighter in Georgia in MMA and jiu-jitsu? I think something like that would be a cool category that would pick up steam. And whether that's the category, I think there's a couple cool categories we can have fun with and not make it so incredibly serious.
I think that'll be amazing, and I can't wait for our awards show. Details to be announced. We definitely look forward to having that dialogue here on NFC Now. Shout out to whoever just said we have a beautiful child. She wins the most beautiful child award. This is Sarai. Say hello. Say what's up.
What's up?
What's up to the NFC community? She always likes to join at the end. I will say next week I hope to have Lady Bree on the show. I hope to have Monica Ridgway on the show. Yes, baby. And we would like to open up maybe on our comment section who the people would like to see. I know we just talked about the fan vote, the Critics' Choice vote, but I'm sure the NFC community has somebody they would like to see on our pod and like somebody that they'd like to hear from. So
maybe we invite Reese Watkins on to talk about how we should do the banquet. I'd love to get in that dialogue.
Voila.
And get his thoughts.
And get his thoughts and have him clearly make his argument on that. So I think that look, Reese Watkins, we got Lady Bree, and hopefully, maybe or maybe not Monica Ridgway and somebody else. So with that said, thank you all for tuning in to NFC Now this beautiful Monday evening. Special shout out to all of our referees who make sacrifices in their everyday life to be a part of these NFC shows and shows around Georgia and regionally. I thought what Jason Collins said about driving 3 hours up 85 and just how he has to be there early and then not get home until later. That just showed me a level of sacrifice and discipline that I don't think that they get acknowledged for enough, man. So I hope that at our next NFC show, we could take some time to really thank the referees and those that are part of the commission, the timekeepers, man, because they really do thankless work. They get a lot of criticism, man, but there's not a lot of times where they have an opportunity to get some shine. And I feel like we did that here today, man. I feel like you could tell that they felt they felt a level of pride for having their own time to talk their talk and get their story off, man. So
and you learned a new term, didn't you? What's a new term you learned?
Diminished spirit.
Diminished spirit.
Diminished spirit. I love that 1,000%. I hope your spirit never diminishes when it comes to NFC Now. So with that being said, we're gonna say peace. Say peace.
Peace.
Peace.